Here. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 1 p.m. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Williams,
I think I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton,
I'm here.
Councilmember Baker,
Here.
Councilmember Caballero, Councilmember Cook, Councilmember Freeman has requested an excused absence today, and Councilmember Rist.
Here.
Thank you.
Let me just clarify, when she requested it, was it at that last meeting or we need to honor it today?
She requested it since the last meeting.
Okay, so we're good. So we just need to do for Councilmember Caballero.
We need to grant an excused absence for Councilmember Freeman, and I'm not sure of the status of Councilmember Caballero.
Okay,
Yeah, she had emailed and asked for she's not feeling good to ask for a.
I hadn't seen that.
all right. So I'll entertain a motion for an excused absence for Councilmember Deidre
So
Freeman.
moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Williams,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton,
Aye.
Councilmember Baker,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook, and Councilmember Rist.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'll also entertain a motion to provide an excused absence for Councilmember Caballero.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Williams,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton,
Aye.
Councilmember Baker,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook, Councilmember Rist.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Announcements. Councilmember Cook.
Hi, everyone. Thanks everyone for being here. It's a very crowded room. And for those of you watching at home, thank you as well. I'm just going to be very brief, which is that I missed our last meeting, so I didn't get a chance to thank the folks who took Councilmember Freeman, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and myself around the forensics lab at the Durham Police Headquarters. It was a really informative tour. I'm so impressed, as always, by the staff. We got to see some really, really cutting edge technology, and it was just a really fascinating. It was really fascinating and really informative, and also I think showed us that we've got some places that we need to work, and maybe some funding that needs to be reallocated. So it was really informative that way as well. And those are all my announcements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Baker. All right, Councilmember Rist.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, Deputy City Manager Chadwell. Good to see you in the seat here today. Thanks for joining us. I just got a couple things. So I did want to follow up on what Councilmember Cook said. So Councilmember Bacon and I today did go on a tour, the same tour, the forensics facility. And I share your comments. Fascinating work, fascinating science, dedicated staff, just amazing stuff. I did want to say, Mr. Mayor, just as an aside, this is both a personal thing, but also I think speaks to our city. So as I was wrapping up the visit, Allison Anderson, who's one of the, I think, firearms forensics experts, said, hey, I was just talking to your cousin Mason the other day. So my cousin Mason Bird actually is the deputy director of the Department of Forensic Science in Virginia. In Virginia, they don't have most police departments don't have their own forensics labs, but they have a couple of, I think there's 4 or 5 state labs. And so my cousin Mason is the deputy director. He was talking to Allison about being on an advisory committee to advise them on their science that they're doing there. And so it just speaks to the fact that the people who work for the city of Durham are among the, as we know this, but I just want to say this again, are respected nationwide for their expertise. So it's great that Allison is in conversation with my cousin Mason, who runs that department for the state of Virginia. So it, again, speaks to our great staff. And again, thanks to Allison Anderson for her amazing work in the forensics facility, along with Captain Bond and her whole staff. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Through all of our challenges, Councilmember Rist, Durham is dope. Mayor Pro Tem.
Your Honor, good afternoon, sir, to my honorable colleagues, everyone in chamber and on whatever platform you may be watching. Greetings. Councilmember Rist and Councilmember Baker, which one of you got to fire a weapon?
Hi.
How do you do?
That was Ms. Anderson. We worked on that together. She was, yeah, it was fascinating just to understand how those test firings improve the science and improve the ability to solve cases. I mean, it's amazing stuff.
Yeah, I said Monday night, they're still repairing the hole that you put in the wall, Mr. Mayor, when you did it. Mine went perfectly. So
Had a little too much fun.
It was too much fun.
Well, we definitely want to send shout outs to the men and women of our police department, our fire department. All of our first responders are doing an amazing job. While most of us are asleep, they are out holding a line for us, running towards situations that most of us flee from. So thank you. I'm glad we've had opportunity to visit with them and property and evidence as well. our police department. Very quickly, Mr. Mayor, not many things today. Let me first welcome Deputy City Manager Chadwell, who's in a hot seat today. Hopefully it won't be too hot for him today. We continue to send well wishes to all who are celebrating and recognizing Black History Month, African American History Month this month. Had a wonderful time celebrating with our members of our Asian American and Pacific Islanders community for the Lunar New Year. Happy New Year to our residents. A bunch of us are on video dancing, twirling things in the air with differing degrees of proficiency. But I want to thank the members of our Asian community who welcomed us so warmly at the Prestonwood Country Club last week to celebrate the Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year. Finally, today, I do want to send our thanks out to the investigative division of our police department. An arrest was made recently. Many of you may have seen in media concerning a 15-year-old who was murdered here. The presumption of innocence belongs to everyone who's arrested, so we're not offering any editorial about guilt or innocence. But there are no winners here. They're both children. They're both minors. So there are no winners here. But I do want to send our thanks out to the investigators who tirelessly work, who try and follow that leads. I don't know how much resolution or comfort this will bring to that family. I imagine very little. But it should put us all on notice and continue to focus our attention as a government, as a citizenry, as people, that this has got to be our number one focus and our number one issue. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, all of our ingenuity, all of our creativity, all of the levers we can pull, all of the buttons we can push as a government, I believe should be on the table. Those that comport with our values as a city should be on the table in combating this scourge. May God bless and comfort that family, both families of the arrested and the victim. And may we keep pushing forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's it for me. Good to see you.
You as well, colleagues. Good to see you all. Shout out to NetApp. Just left there. Just left RTP at NetApps and was celebrating Black History Month with them as their keynote speaker. And I do not do any public speaking without, one, informing what's happening in our city, and two, charging them to get involved and get engaged, not only civically, but also where we need it most, and that's with our children. So I'm constantly finding alignment in our own lanes, what we do. You know, NetApps is a technology company. Well, to the 50 people that were sitting in the room and the 400 and something online, I charged all of them to make sure that they replace themselves with a young person smarter than them. And I think that should be all of our charge. But I do want to make sure we have young people to replace us. And as I said last night, I'll say again, especially to the folks who said, how dare you blame the parents? I'm not blaming anyone. We all are responsible for raising the kids in this community. But it makes no sense that, we have a 14-year-old shooting at state troopers and then killing someone of their own age in the middle of the night or during the day while playing in snow. I've been in constant communication with the mother of the 15-year-old, like many parents, and it is very uncomfortable, which it should be. And I hope that more people, get involved so you don't have to have those conversations. It is very uncomfortable, and it's time for us to get uncomfortable and get more proximate with the folks in our community that are living lives outside of our constant focus. And I started that charge with this council. We have our political ideals, we have our political agendas, and then there are real world issues that folks are dealing with on a daily basis that we don't talk about. And I want to make sure that we're running a government that responds to the needs of the people, all people, not just the loudest ones. And that's every corner in this entire community, not just the ones that are paid to organize and not just the ones that are able to organize to come in here and talk about a specific issue. So those are uncomfortable charges, but so be it. So be it as it may. This is also our reality. So thank you, NetApps, for inviting me to speak, and thanks for taking the charge. I speak of that because I charge everybody in this room as well. Each of you all are sitting in your seats right now because you have a concern that you're here about today. I ask that you have a +1, and that is the preservation of life of the young people in this city. If that is not your #1 priority, you might have to wait a little bit when we talk, because that is mine. You want to talk about cheeseburgers? Talk to me about the kids first. You want to talk about infrastructure? Talk to me about the kids first. Just leave with that. Let me know that that is a shared concern. All right, and I'm saying it that way to let you know what my #1 priority is. Okay. Welcome, Garland. Garland Keith Chadwell, Deputy City Manager, who's sitting in today. So y'all didn't know that was his real name, his first name.
Just can't keep a secret.
That man's business out there like that. Man.
Yeah, but these are hard times, that we're talking about here, but as Mayor Pro Tem said, innocent until proven guilty, but we know of a lot of assurances that are happening in this community that we must address. And we're going to get to this work today. Yes, thanks for mentioning the Lunar New Year. We had a ball, had a great time. Mr. Deputy City Manager, if you don't mind, I'll pass it over to you for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for this opportunity. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council, I take this opportunity, if that's granted to me, to extend a few words of tribute and honor to a city employee who passed away from among us just a few days ago. I'd like to bring honor to Mr. Julian Arroyo, a building inspector in the inspections department, transitioned just a few days ago again after a fairly lengthy illness. He was funeralized in Durham on yesterday. Mr. Arroyo came to us in 2016 after a distinguished stint with the Facilities and Design Unit at Duke University. And in our inspections department, an operation known in Durham for its stellar work, Mr. Arroyo was a major contributor who was highly valued by his colleagues. He was always willing to share his passion for music, and I understand was a skilled guitar player. On behalf of all of us who work for this great organization, we extend to his family and loved ones our support, our expressions of condolences and peace, and of life celebration, as from his labors, he now rests. Thank you for this opportunity to bring this sharing. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing that. Grateful for his service and wishing and praying strength to his family. I just recently was able to meet him during my department visits. I realized we shared a music background. So
Thank you.
good man, good man. All right, Mr. Manager, Deputy City Manager, do you have any priority items today?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. The city manager has one supplemental item for your hearing today. The supplemental item, that's a presentation of an overview on the housing opportunities for persons with AIDS or HOPWA program. It'll be presented by a representative from the Community Development Department. We anticipate approximately 20 minutes for the presentation. Thank you. That completes our priority.
Thank you. Madam Attorney, welcome. Do you have any priority items?
Thank you. I do not, Mr. Mayor. City Attorney's Office has no priority items.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do you have any priority items?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. I wanted to give my board, committee, and commission report.
Yes.
Okay, 2 of the items have consensus with the City Council. The first, the Recreation Advisory Commission mayoral appointment, is Michael Johnston. The next, the Durham Performing Arts Center Oversight Committee appointment. The nominee for business category is Don Moffitt. The nominee for the business community finance category is Alice L. Sharp. And the third group of nominees, the Durham Homeless Services Advisory Committee appointment For the category of nonprofit organization, we have a tie between Tasha D. Melvin and Drew Wooten.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm happy to speak on that since I'm the HSAC liaison. Both candidates, incredible folks in our community, both head up really important nonprofits. I did cast my vote for Drew Wooten, and the reason that I did that is because he has been coming to the HSAC meetings with a lot of really concrete plans and ideas, and I think that his voice would be really useful as an actual voting member of HSAC. But I just want to say both of them have had amazing contributions to the community in that sphere. So both good choices, but I just wanted to explain why, as the liaison, what I've been witnessing in the meetings and why I cast my vote for him.
Who did I vote for, Madam Clerk?
1 second.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you voted for Tasha Melvin.
Yeah, I was going to say that was the recommendation. I voted for Tasha Melvin as well. She came as a recommendation from the organization, so I usually try to follow that practice. Yeah, Javier.
Councilmember Freeman didn't vote. I'm sorry, Councilmember Caballero.
Yeah, GBA.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Got it.
Mr. Mayor, can I suggest that you entertain a motion to accept the manager's priority item?
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you. I'll now entertain a motion to accept the manager's priority item.
So moved.
Been moved. Been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Williams,
Here, I mean,
Mayor-
yes, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, Councilmember Baker,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook, and Councilmember Rist.
Aye.
Thank you. And I do have one more housekeeping item. At the dais is a survey or a poll for the legislative committee meeting next week. If you could please mark down your preferences, first, second, and third options. I'll collect those after the meeting.
So
Thank
question
you.
about that. It doesn't have a time. This is maybe an hour-long meeting, right? It's a little hard to answer the question. It's all day long, so.
I'll defer to
That
Chief
depends.
Wallace.
Yeah.
Yes, and good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, Carmisha Wallace, City Manager's Office. 1 hour is about what we are anticipating, and I want to clarify, it is not a legislative committee meeting. This is an opportunity for the full council to meet with our new federal lobbyists. But we're trying to schedule it in a way that everybody can attend, but certainly the legislative committee. So we're trying to get there.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I might, as I indicated to the clerk, I'll pick something today, but I would feel more comfortable checking with my administrative support. See, I don't have no idea what my schedule is next week, but I'll get back as timely as possible.
And also knowing if there are any
Thank you.
particular with targets of time. I mean, those days there's things going on. Some days are less full than others, but it's really the particular time. So I don't know if that's.
I did reach out to your administrative support staff yesterday and asked that they communicate with you to find out the best time that will work for you. But yes, the window would certainly be not to exceed an hour.
We hope. It's the federal government. Got a lot going on up there, so. All right. So, Madam Clerk, that concludes your report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to receive the clerk's report with one item, the Durham Homeless Services Advisory Committee appointment being on GBA.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Williams.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, Councilmember Baker,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook, Councilmember Rist.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to, before we get into this, I want to read the consent agenda. And I am going to move our citizens matters up. All right. I hope I don't look weird because I stole Chief of Staff Wallace's glasses. Thank you for letting me hold them. Number one, Recreation Advisory Commission, mayoral appointment. Number two, Durham Homeless Services Advisory Committee appointment. Number three, Durham Performing Arts Center Oversight Committee. Number four, interlocal agreement for the distribution of sales tax between the city and Durham County. Number five, 2024 Durham Planning Commission Annual Report. Number six, 2024 Durham Historic Preservation Commission Annual Report. Number seven, Durham Open Space and Trails Commission Annual Report. Number eight, Durham City County Appearance Commission Annual Report. Number nine, Durham Board of Adjustment Annual Report. Number 10, 2024 Citizens Advisory Committee Annual Report. Number 11, Homeless Services Advisory Committee Annual Report. Number 12, Amendment number 1 for contract number 18421 with United Minority Contractors of North Carolina Incorporated for MWBE, Minority Women Business Enterprise Workforce, Section 3, and Davis Bacon Consulting Services.
I'd like to
Pull that
pull
one.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, it's popular. Number 13, well, Nate, Councilmember Baker, you're taking, okay.
I'm right.
Yep, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Javier spoiled me. She just write it right there and I look over her notes. Number 13, Durham Convention Center Authority Board, 2024 Annual Report. Number 14, Durham Cultural Advisory Board, 2024 Annual Report. Number 15, Durham Environmental Affairs Board, 2024 Annual Report. Number 16, Third Amendment to lease with Duke University Health Systems Incorporated for the Emergency Communications 911 Backup Center. Number 17, Solid Waste Management Transfer Station Building Number 1 Renovation Project Design Contract with DTW Architects and Planners Limited. Number 18, First Amendment to Service Agreement for Project Management Consulting Services with Turner and Townsend Heery LLC. Number 19, Ratification of 5 fiscal year 25 festivals and events contracts.
Pull that one, please.
Number 20, Second Amendment to the Professional Services Contract with ADW Architects, PA, for the Durham City Fire and Durham County EMS Station 19 project. Number 21, Second Amendment to the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act Adult and Dislocated Worker Program Delivery Contract with Eckert Youth Alternative Incorporated, DBA Eckert Connects Contract number 19714. Number 22, Bimbé Festival Headlining Booking Agent Contract.
Pull that one. Oh.
I'm pulling that too. Number 23, 2024 Recreation Advisory Commission Annual Report. Number 24, Sale and Storage Agreement for Sodium Chloride Salt. Number 25, Contract Amendment number 1 for Stormwater Infrastructure Repairs, SD 2022-02. That's been pulled by Councilmember Baker. Number 26, Utility Relocation Agreement, URA, for Stormwater Drainage System Repair and Sanitary Sewer Main Relocation Project with LRC GB LLC and LRC Cordoba LLC. Number 27, First Amendment to Service Contract with ePlus Technology Incorporated, being pulled by Councilmember Baker. Number 28, Contract with ePlus Incorporated for the implementation of the Metropolitan Area Network. Number 29, 2024 Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission Annual Report. Number 30, Municipal Agreement with the North Carolina Department of Transportation for North Roxborough Street at Horton Road and Denfield Street Project. Tip W 5705 AI. Number 31, Purchase of 7 replacement light transit vehicles for Go Durham Access. Number 32, Purchase Order with Premier Water LLC for aeration basin pumps at the North Durham Water Reclamation Facility. And we just, for reference, consolidated annexation, Polanco residence, number 33. Number 34, zoning map change, Hoover Road assemblage. And number 35, overview of housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, HOPWA. That's a presentation. All right, so that is our consent agenda with items 12 18, 19, 22, 25, and 27 pulled. I know. All right. I'm now going to pull us up back to Citizens Matters. I'll start online first. I have Dwarren Langley. Mr. Langley, can you hear me? Hello, Councilmember Freeman. See you watching us.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me now?
I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so very much. I want to first start by taking a moment of silence for the 15-year-old that was unfortunately killed, as well as the 2-year-old in Oxford Manor that was unfortunately struck by firearm in the leg. Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council, we are at a fierce urgency of now. Yesterday, I saw a comment from our police chief where she said, "I am screaming." And as I recall, of maybe a few years ago, the police chief made a very pointed statement while she was giving her crime report, where she said between the ages of 16 and 24, if you are a young black male, and we're talking about here in Durham, you are either going to be a victim or a suspect. That statement is ringing true entirely too much in our community. The council is about to embark on one of its biggest and most important fiduciary responsibilities in our community, which is budget deliberations. As you all begin these deliberations, I want you to think about, prioritize, and put money to the most vulnerable individuals in our community, that being boys and young men of color. Mr. Mayor, you said this is a priority. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you said this is a priority, and I implore upon the other members of council to make this a priority. We cannot continue to start council meetings highlighting or discussing when young people in our community are being injured or arrested without providing an alternative and having a collective community strategy that is going to support, nurture, and provide opportunity for our young people to capitalize on the economic opportunity that exists in our community. That prosperity, that shared prosperity, is not going to happen with hollow words. It requires action. And I would implore each of you to take a look at some of the work being done by the mayor of Baltimore, one of the most violent cities in the United States. He is investing in people. And when we invest in people, they have the resources, the support to make better decisions. And so I'll be reaching out to each one of you, asking you what your commitment is, because hollow words are not going to solve this problem. And we can't just rely on companies. And Mr. Mayor, I know you just mentioned that you met with Meta. I would implore you to start, when you start meeting with these companies, ask them to make a tangible commitment. Not just to say that they're going to do something, but ask them before you leave, what can I depend on you to do? Are you going to open your doors to internships? Are you going to open your doors to developmental opportunities? Because if they're in this community and they expect their business to thrive, we have to invest in these young people. So I thank you all for taking time to listen, but what I need more from you all is action. Thank you so very much, Mr. Mayor and members of council.
Thank you for your comments. I met with NetApps and they have, we are now officially starting that charge for them to get more engaged, and I'm grateful for that. And when Meta comes to town, I'll be doing the same with them. And I do implore everyone to please visit the Bull City Future Fund. That is our most direct, non-red tape way of supporting directly into the youth saving organizations in this city. Good. All right. The other person online is a resource. Okay. All right, first up, I have Ms. Burris. Welcome, thanks for being here. Yeah, just press the button on the right.
Okay.
There you go.
Hello to the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem. Already I'm disappointed. And I'm gonna say why. Mayor, you gave a valuable point just now. If we're in it, you need to show some sign. People are here on their own agendas, and because their agenda didn't come forth, they left. Just like they do in church when a sermon get ready to come up, you leave. Well, being a preacher of the gospel and being led by the Holy Spirit, the young man that was charged with or being charged or allegedly being charged happened to be one of the young men in my neighborhood that was living in the complex right across the street. I tried to reach out to mom. Nobody would give me his address or anything like that. I talked to that young man several times about being in trouble. Now look where he is today. Then we got the deceased young man's mother dealing with death. Now, if y'all never lost a child, you don't know how it feels. So I wish people would stop saying they understand how an individual feel, because you don't. I live in East Durham. I am the co-facilitator down there for District 5, PAC 5, Partners Against Crime. We got 5 of those districts. I constantly ask y'all, thank you, Mayor, for showing up. Thank you, Nate Baker, for showing up at our last meeting. It's not but one Saturday or 2 Saturdays out of a month or 5 that we ask y'all to come to our meetings and give us 2 hours or 45 minutes to talk about this. I've lived through the gunfire. I've lived through running in my house. I'm standing today as a community leader because I'm a boots on the ground. But we talk about love, we are far from it. We worried about the administrator. Don't worry about the White House. We need to be concerned with local level and see what we're gonna do about our children. Now, everything that was supposed to be in East Durham right now has been taken from us. No community centers, nothing going on. I can't get a man with a pair of britches on to come down there and help me talk to some of these young folks. They look at me as mama, auntie, nana, grandma. I don't care, that's fine. But why is me being a female that I have to be the one talking to a male child? And I'm grateful I was a single parent. I came through the ranks. My son is now 40 years old and doing very well. But it was hard. I had some males around here, whether they were any good or not good, halfway male, whatever, they was around. Where are we really? Where is our priorities today? Where are we? Y'all get paid. I don't get paid. I'm boots on the ground. I'm losing stuff just like all of y'all. But I'm going to tell y'all something. You hear me today? The good is going to suffer with the bad. So y'all sitting up here, chilling like Willie. I get a paycheck. You in your meetings, eating, drinking coffee. I done been in corporate. I know what I'm saying. Born and raised in Washington, D.C. Okay? So y'all can have all the meetings you want to. That's irrelevant. I need you to get out of the meetings and come down on ground level. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Burris. Next person I have is Relva Smith.
What button? Okay, it's on. Hello, I'm Relva Smith. Hello to the mayor and all city council. I am a lifelong resident of Durham, North Carolina. I stay in East Durham. I purchased a home through the Habitat program and just trying to better myself. Because I've moved around Durham over 42 times in trying to find safe and affordable housing. So that's why I joined the Habitat for Humanity program. I finally moved into my home September 2021. And since then, it's been nothing but hell. Right on the corner of East Main, where the new Shell is, it's a sense of lawlessness. People know they can come over there for prostitution, the drug activity, the drug sellers pull up in their cars on East Main and Laurel and stay there, sell their products, and have no respect for the citizens or myself or the other homeowners that stay on Laurel Avenue. there was a drug bust over there. And the police is always saying, well, we don't have enough police. And if you help them out, then there's communication sent back in the community. And then the community is looking at you or looking at me as a snitch or a person. So as I'm driving by through the drug deals, people are literally watching me in my face. And that's making me very, very uncomfortable. And the school children are walking through the drug deals in the mornings, in the evening, getting on the bus, getting off the bus. When is it going to stop? When is the police going to be the police, someone dispatched to curtail this activity? It's just like that area of town. It's like, oh, well, it's just blacks over there. So it continues. And enough is enough. I don't feel safe. I used to walk East Durham all the way around Golden Belt, everything, trying to get my exercise. But now I don't even feel safe. Because that night, one of the last times that Shot Spotter was in place, I used to work at an urgent care center, and I was coming home. And as soon as I rounded the corner, that's when the bullets rang out. And a half a second less, me and my car would have been shot up. And enough is enough. So I really don't know how much more I can take in living in that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know exactly what you're saying. I've spent time with you all, and just keep showing up.
And I did send the itemized list as you requested.
Thank you. And what she's referencing, I did ask community members to send me. I believe community members should be a part of the solution to feeling safer. And I asked them to send me an itemized list of what they think they need in their community. As I said, there's an underworld in this city that exists that we tend to ignore. And I hope that we could really start paying attention to it. But I have been charging community members with coming to city council and sharing those realities with us. I've ridden my bike over there, I've driven over there, I know exactly what they're talking about. It is true. So thank you. Last speaker I have is Shay Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to everybody else here for your time. I am here as a representative of myself as a local entrepreneur and business owner, and also on behalf of a number of entrepreneurs in the community. So in September, a number of us participated in a program that was funded by the city, or was supposed to have been funded by the city. It was the Momentum Financial Academy. It was a great program. It was a business accelerator. We did a lot of great things. They instructed us through this program to get ready to receive $20,000 in grant funding. We were told that we would receive this money in 30 to 45 days. We were instructed to make a number of plans to reach out to other businesses to help us with our funding, with our growth, with all the things that we needed. We also were instructed to take on insurance contracts that we didn't necessarily need, but that we were told were necessary to receive this funding from the city. We're at almost 5 months. None of us have received a dollar. We've lost this money and we've heard nothing tangible from anybody involved with the program. In fact, when I've reached out to people in the city, I've been told by people in the program that we shouldn't be reaching out to anybody, that we should go directly through them, which is counterintuitive to me because if I don't get an answer from you, I'm not going to talk to you. It's a waste of my time. So as a business owner who was invited into this program and was told that this was going to help my business, to sit here repeatedly, monthly, being billed for something that I don't need, and to hear nothing but, I mean, I wish I got excuses. I haven't even gotten excuses. And lately, I've been told that now this funding, which should have been in financial year FY24, has been held up by the current administration. which is patently unacceptable. So, frankly, I want to know where our money is. We all want to know where our money is. And we want to know that our city officials are invested in making sure that the programs that bear your city's name are doing what they're supposed to be doing, because many of them aren't. Many of them. This isn't the only one. This is the most egregious example I've seen. But you need to be aware that a lot of the programs that pretend that they are helping entrepreneurs in the city are in fact doing the exact opposite. So I would love some attention to this matter, because let me tell you, as a small business owner who was recently separated from my wife, 20,000 would go a long way for me. And I don't know what's going to happen with this environment. None of us do, right? But I know that typically I love Durham. But right now, I'm not really feeling Durham's dopeness. So thank you.
Thank you. And I did request that, those concerns were shared publicly today, and I'd like a response.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. My name is Ed Nixon. I'm the acting director for the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. First of all, let me say, Mr. Ramos, I definitely sympathize with you. $20,000 can be a big help. I sympathize with the concerns that you have about the program. I will offer as an explanation and not an excuse that these are federal funds that are being passed. And of late, we have some concerns have surfaced related to some compliance issues. And so before we can continue, the money's coming out, those compliance issues have to be addressed. And those compliance issues are being addressed by the department. Again, not an excuse, but in the interim, we do have plans to engage an alternate source of funding so that the $20,000 can be awarded. I would hope, and I would like to think that even outside the $20,000, that you got a lot of valuable knowledge and experience with the program. But to your point, if the grant was a part of what you were anticipating, that is what you will have. And so right now we are exploring an alternate source of funding. It is every intention of our department to make sure that those awards are made.
Yes. There's a question. Go ahead and ask questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. Just while you're up here, the one other piece that I heard from Mr. Ramos was that there has been a lack of communication or responsiveness. Can you address that piece for us as well?
Yeah, I asked for an actual detailed listing of the communications, and I have a number of communications from November, December, January, both to individual participants of the program and group participants. Now, to be blunt, communication that sounds like the runaround is not much of a communication. So I understand what he's saying. But there is not zero contact at all. It hasn't been no communication. Maybe not adequate communication, or maybe communication that has not resulted in the $20,000. I think that is where we are. But those communications, certainly I have looked at them today, and I've seen where communications have gone out. But if you don't have the $20,000, you can keep telling me a lot of things. I do not want to minimize Mr. Ramos or any other of our participants' feelings regarding this. So this is something that definitely will be addressed.
We just get. Do you have a timeline that Mr. Ramos can expect, and what are sort of next steps there?
And so the alternate source of funding we anticipate over the next 30 to 45 days, some checks can be cut. And by the way, I've heard that the 30 to 45 days from when you finish a program, you don't get the money. I've heard that. I don't know if that's anything we've actually officially stated, but nonetheless, I stand here now and I'll work around within the next 30 to 45 days. Now, obviously, there are going to be some compliance issues, some things that have to happen to make sure you get the money as before, but definitely we're going to be aggressively pursuing making sure that these payments go out.
Just to be more blunt on that one, I mean, can we give Mr. Ramos a deadline? We often say, but can we say a date? So we have a clear metric there. Either he has the funds or he doesn't.
Today is February the 6th. Might have got a calendar. Give me 45 days from February 6th.
45 days. Okay.
March 23rd. Is that it? What day does that fall on? That's a Sunday. So March 24th. Yeah. So matter of fact, now I got to make myself a note. All right. So I have until March 24th. Now, of course, that's going to be pending. There's still going to be some requirements that have to be met to get the money, and those type of things. But assuming we get all the information that we need, March 24th would be a drop date that we would anticipate. And yeah, I'll stop there.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. That time frame was given to me prior to the meeting, and just want to share with council that the administration is going to put hands on the review. This is an unacceptable scenario for us, and I'm not going to counter that particular deadline at this point, as deadlines are certainly necessary when something this is egregious has occurred. But just want to add that we certainly hope to have this completed well in advance of that particular.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Nixon, good to see you.
You too.
So in this business, we know whenever federal money is cut, there's all kind of strings and attached and thresholds you have to cross and things you have to meet. So my first question is, when you say compliance issue, you're talking about on our side, not the Fed side. So what type of challenges did we meet with our responsibilities for compliance specifically? What did we not do?
I am thinking more along the lines of the federal side. There's some certain environmental requirements that had to be met
by us.
Yes, that we had to meet that came into question. But we're not sure that we've been doing this. We're not sure that this piece is done, and it related to an environmental assessments.
Could you be more specific? What did we not do? What specifically?
There was not a documented verification that the people that received the grant awards were not harming the environment. Anybody that get these funds, one of the things is if you're getting this is community development block grant money. When you're getting this money, one of the boxes you have to check is this money is not going to an entity that is going to harm the environment. Okay. So now we're giving these to small business owners, barbershops, those kind of things. They're not going to harm the environment. And so I think that there was a more thorough and a more deliberate, the decision was made that needed to be deliberately addressed and not just assuming that these things aren't happening.
Right.
It's a more formalized process is what I'm saying. We have to more formally say this barbershop's not going to harm the environment, that kind of thing.
Right. And I don't want to mischaracterize or oversimplify your representation, but you're not saying they didn't get their money because we didn't check a box. What was it? Is this a personnel issue? Is it someone wasn't familiar with the federal standards, or I'm still trying to understand, because obviously it's not as simple as checking a box. I mean, what did we?
It's not that, and I'm trying not to This community development block grant money is managed by another department in the city, community development department. And so they're our compliance arm. And so they tell us, hey, you can give the money, everything's done, here's the money.
Okay.
So what has happened is they've come up and said, wait a minute, there's a piece that hadn't gotten done.
Right.
And we need to go back and do this piece. And so we're working with them to resolve that.
Mr. Manager, is there any symmetry between this issue and the $100,000 we approved last time for a firm to deal with compliance issues? Are these related?
None whatsoever,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. This program dates back to the COVID period, and the sourcing of the community development block grant monies were outside of our normal allocations. They were additional allocations, ironically awarded to operations who have proved worthy of being able to manage them successfully. And even transcending, I think, the normal compliance activity that Mr. Nixon is now trying to explain, even through several years post-COVID that they're awarded, and we're still in a compliance period where this is still eligible to use. There are statements associated that have to be proven that state with some certainty that we've given this award to an operation that met a deficit that they experienced during COVID.
Okay.
And that's another one of the reviews that I think our compliance arm thought we could have been lacking in.
Okay. Thank you for that. So as a fiduciary of this city, when I hear alternate sources of funding, of course, my antenna go up. We pass a budget. Every dime and penny that we give to each department is accounted for. That's my suspicion when I vote for a budget.
Mm-hmm.
So one, when you say alternate sources of funding, what does that mean? And if we are to cut, and I'm not interested in cutting checks from alternate sources just to save city's face, to get in trouble with the feds on the back end. I mean, if we cut these checks and then the feds ultimately release the money, is that a reimburse? Are we just reimbursing ourselves? So what do you mean by alternate sources other than the federal money that we get? What are those sources?
And I'm sorry I don't have the number, but we came to council a couple of months ago with an ARPA contract.
Okay.
And we wanted to use ARPA dollars to continue the Momentum program, the same program.
Okay.
And so what I've decided is, listen, let's use the ARPA money now, and we'll work with community development on the back end to clean up those issues. So we're going to use the ARPA money now. We were going to put the ARPA money on the end.
Okay.
But now we're going to use the ARPA money now. Council's already approved it. It's for this purpose. So we're going to use the ARPA money now. And then hopefully by that time, we would have gotten all the issues we needed to address so we can return back to the community development block grant money.
So the alternate sources are the ARPA money?
Yes.
But that's federal money too, isn't it?
Yes.
It doesn't quite come with the same environmental
Right.
aspects of the compliance piece. It will carry over the COVID impact, but it will not carry out the complexity associated with the environmental reviews and some of the normal kinds of things that would come with a CDBG money.
So if we use ARPA money now to cut these checks, how then do we account? How do we account for the money that's coming from the other federal source if and when we get that money, if they've already gotten their checks? How do we?
What was the question?
If we're going to use alternate sources, namely ARPA money, to pay them now, what then becomes of the source that they were supposed to be paid from? Is that money, does that just go away? When that money comes to us, are we refunded? How do we report that money to the feds?
So that money is still available to us, but it'll probably go to a future cohort.
Okay. I'll have some more questions, but I'll deal with staff after this. I'll yield now to any other questions colleagues might have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Let's, I think with this,
Clear as mud.
yeah, well, I think, this is when I say, I've learned to appreciate bureaucracy, but it's a love-hate relationship. I understand that, we have some federal ties to this money and compliance, but I do want us to start thinking, and this is just a culture shift in government in general, but we do need to start thinking more about the end user, more about the customer service aspect of it. Because this stuff is really complex. We have very capable professionals like you guys to understand it. I couldn't even begin to understand the complexities of compliance with federal dollars, but I do understand, hey, this is the city, just give me a call. We're dealing with some things. We're working on it. And I don't, as mayor, want to have to get a call because of not fully understanding the system. Because I'm going to make sure that I dig into it myself, but also I want to make sure that, folks feel like their government is working with them and for them. So just at the end of the day, the bigger picture is it's customer service. So,
Understood.
and I appreciate you all figuring this out.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. We now have the item 12. Down old items. Yeah. All right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I ask one last question? Sorry, just for
Yeah,
clarity.
go ahead. Go
So
ahead.
has the city of Durham made a representation today by date certain we're cutting checks to individuals? Is that my understanding? Is that the administration's understanding that we have committed to cut checks by a date certain? Or was that just someone to be clear about that?
We established 45 days as an out date for those checks to be cut with an ardent effort to make sure that it doesn't take that long.
And how many checks are we talking about? How many interests are we talking about?
It could be as many as 13.
Totaling approximately how much?
20,000 each, that's 260.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr., could you turn that mic off for me up there? Thank you. All right, number 12 was pulled by Councilmember Cook. This is amendment number 1 for contract number 18421 with United Minority Contractors North Carolina Incorporated for MWBE Workforce Section 3 and Davis-Bacon Consulting Services.
Hi, Mr. Johnson. Okay. I have a few questions about this. So I'm going to try and put them into a logical order here, but I guess I understand that we have an internal city goal of a compliance rate in contracting with minority or women-owned businesses, and that was city set when we did the bond. Is that correct?
No, Reginald J. Johnson, Director of Community Development Department with the City of Durham. The 7 and 11% goals have been established with the city for some time, much longer before the bond. And those are not set by community development. Those have been set by previous administrations.
And so we are using part of the bond grant to do this work to ensure that we meet these percentages. Is that right?
No, ma'am, that's not correct. Actually, we're using dedicated housing fund. Dedicated housing fund to for this contract.
Okay, so it is but it is coming out of dedicated housing fund money. And the only connection that it has with housing is that these companies will be contracted around this topic. Is that, am I understanding this correctly?
No, that's
Maybe you should just explain what, because I have read this memo several times, and I'm just going to be frank with you that I don't think that it makes a lot of sense. And it's also a pretty big increase in money. It's what, like a 30% increase. And the contract that is provided on our agenda has exactly 0 details on it. So if you could just maybe explain why we need to meet these percentages, why this is the money coming out of Forever Home Durham, why that money is coming out of Forever Home Durham, and then what the contract, why we need the additional money and what that contract hopes to gain for us.
Yes, I'll be glad to. This is one of the major tenets when we talk about minority and women-owned participation in Forever Home Durham. That was one of the, I would say, constructs or agreements or tenets when the bond was put forth before the public. One of the things that was shared that we will work and be aggressively in pursuing women-owned and minority-owned businesses and the work that we do, not just with the bond, but all of the work that was part of Forever Home Durham. Previous to that, community development had just been using, in part, the city's operations in terms of minority and women-owned participation. But with this, we needed to be more more direct, more aggressive. And so we said to the public that we would actually engage that firm to be able to help us with minority-owned business to make sure that we were inclusive and diverse as possible. One of the things that, if you recall, if 58 million of the bond, which is 95B, goes to the Housing Authority, the Housing Authority does use these services to help develop minority-owned businesses, pursue them, also include them in working with contractors, general contractors. One of the other pieces that part of Forever Home Durham also requires is because we have federal funds involved, we have to do Section 3, and also because some other funds are involved, we have to do the Davis-Bacon. And so we need assistance to be able to do that. All of those are requirements for using these funds. And one of the things we wanted to do as a community was make sure and ensure that as part of affordable housing creation, that minority and women-owned businesses were included.
I understand the goal, and I also want to be clear that I support that goal. I think where I'm getting stuck is that I'm having trouble understanding why we're expending this much money to do something that is a city goal that we then know that we have this city goal with every project that we are taking on. Well, we don't have the capacity to do it in-house, and so then we have to spend money to contract that out, which is money then that does not get put towards housing, right? And this is a pot of money that is meant to be for housing, and this is like the biggest crisis that we have in the city. So I'm kind of getting stuck there.
Okay, I definitely understand and can appreciate that. What I would first begin to share is that the reality is that for some of the funds that we use, there's an expense and cost to be able to use them in a particular way. That's the reason we have staff, the reason we have to follow the rules and all of those things, and it has a cost to it. So it's not free, if you will. The other part is saying that we needed to be specifically be aggressive with, that was an important part heretofore with community development, the resources that we had and the programs that we had prior to the bond, we were able to do it because it was smaller programs. This, if you see, with the numbers that we have shared, we're doing way more funding. And not only that, it's more complex because we part of the firm and we have the representative of the firm here can talk about the work that they have to do with the general contractors to ensure that minority-owned contractors are invited, that they have the opportunity to be to help them prepare their bids so that they are, in fact, competitive in terms of participation and being selected.
And so without this contract, we don't feel like the city can provide the adequate support we need in order to prepare folks to get that federal funding. Is that?
Oh, I would say definitely not.
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
But we
not
have,
as we're not in terms of how we're constructed now.
Okay, but we have had it previously, but just for maybe less complex and less large federal grants.
I would say so.
And the increase that we're seeing here, can you explain why that amount why we're extending the term as opposed to why we didn't have that in the original contract?
Well, what I'll do is I'll explain, then I'll have in part, and then I'll have Ms. Renee Jones to come and speak in detail. One of the reasons that we knew that we would have it for an initial period of time because we wanted to be able to assess whether we needed to continue. So there was a break. We didn't have a contract with the firm, and this is in a couple of other areas too, for the entire period of Forever Home Durham. And so we broke it into parts. And so we will have had a chance to begin from the beginning. And now we're at a point where we almost, better than halfway through, but we still need to continue the work because a lot of the funding it still is going to fall within the framework that minority and women-owned businesses need to have the opportunity to participate. I'll let Ms. Renee Jones talk a little bit more in detail in terms of the actual expenditures.
Good afternoon, Councilman. I'm Renee Jones, and I am the project lead for United Minority Contractors Association. Councilman Cook, can you reiterate your question?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess my question is why we're sort of changing this contract and amending it and increasing when I heard Mr. Johnson say we're a little bit more than halfway through. We still have a lot of the funding that needs to be potentially distributed and folks that might like to be contractors. But surely we kind of foresaw that it wouldn't all be done by now. So why was the contract written in such a way that we would have to then amend and add money moving forward?
That I cannot answer you.
That's my question. No, that's my question.
Okay.
And that's why I was sharing with, it was intentional that we would not go the entire period. We wanted to have a break in contract, and we had the opportunity to maybe, in fact, not move forward. But we have elected and made the decision that it was best because of the work that we've seen and the impact that it's had. That's the answer to that question. I think the question that you were trying to ask for Ms. Jones was the question about, well, what is it that they do and why does it cost what it does?
I would like to know that because, I mean, again, the contract, and we just probably don't have the original contract, but the amendment to the contract is literally like, please keep going, thank you, here's a lot more dollars, and that's literally it. I mean, it's like 4 lines long. So maybe you could just give us a little baseline about what the original contract looked like, what the tangibles are that we received from that contract in this.
So the contract consists of probably 3 main areas. One is to do outreach to the MWBE firms, which is minority and women-owned firms. One is to help the general contractors and the developers to create and implement a workforce development plan, which covers your Section 3 requirements. And the third part is to do all of the compliance on the Davis-Bacon, which is the workforce compliance that's associated with all the federal dollars. So a lot of it is compliance. Most of the contract monitoring that we do is compliance. That is a requirement for the federal government. The other is helping developers who don't necessarily work with small businesses to understand the process, to also help the general contractors who may be new to working with small businesses or minority and women-owned businesses, especially if they are not local to this area. So understanding who the players are, where they can be located, what their capacity is, when is the best time and the best way to communicate with them, what resources they have as far as workforce development programs that are local, who are the nonprofits that they can work along with. So we are helping them with all of those types of things so that they can meet the compliance requirements set out by the city, which is some city requirements and some federal requirements.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Johnson, I'm gonna go back to you one more time, and then I think some other folks have some questions. I'm gonna pass it off for now. You said just a minute ago that it was intentional that the contract wouldn't run all the way through so that we could reassess that the staff has made the decision that we do want to continue this contract. Can you just give us a brief sort of breakdown of how that decision was reached?
Well, yes, the decision was reached based upon the results and the reports that the firm provides to us, made it and based upon the percentages and the efficacy of the work that they've been doing, based upon what work we need to do moving forward.
I'm gonna be done for now.
And I would also say one of the reasons that the amendment, and we can provide the contract, the original contract, which has the original scopes in detail. We're not making any changes to that. But the amendment is just adding money and time, which is the reason it's the length, that it doesn't, there was no reason to add anything in terms of change of scope.
Councilmember Rist.
Just looking at this here. So I want to continue that line of question, but sort of take it in a little different direction. So going back to the, when we passed the bond, I remember this discussion at the community level. This is a big major investment. We're talking $160 million investing, right? And often public investments are an amazing way to engage minority and women-owned businesses in the work that we do at the city, to give them a chance to thrive as businesses, right? So that's a key objective, not only here, but for the city generally, right? So I appreciate the work we're doing in that regard, and I appreciate that this work for the housing bond is part of our work to support minority and women-owned businesses. My question is simply, along the same lines, is that if we've had this initial contract, but I see the report that we got in our materials, which shows about $2.6 million of total contracted, I guess that's total contracted business with minority and women-owned firms in Durham, of which 1.4 of that went to women-owned businesses and 1.2 to minority-owned businesses. Is that correct?
So yes, those are just the numbers for Durham County firms.
Right, but we're just talking about a contract for Durham, right? We're not talking about, this is what we're talking about, right? We're not talking about Forsyth or Wake, right?
So what the office CDD had asked me to do is to break down all of the committed to all the MWBE firms and show it by location. So in order for you to get a total,
So
you
you're
would
saying-
have to add up all of the numbers.
Right, so
to get
you're
the
saying
total.
that, so these are potentially Wake County owned firms could be working on these projects in Durham. And that's why that's why Wake and Forsyth.
Yes, you do have a number of firms,
Okay.
MWBE firms coming from other counties.
But that's good. And again, I understand that the work you have to do is to help, part of what you're saying, Mr. Johnson, is that you need a partner to help you identify firms, to do training and outreach, right? And do tracking. So I get all that piece. I guess my question is on a very basic level, is if our goal here is to have 11% of total contracting opportunities awarded to minority-owned firms and 7% of total contracting awarded to women-owned firms, did we reach that goal in the first phase? Because I see absolute numbers, millions of dollars. I guess if we add up Wake, Durham, Forsyth, whatever. But my question is, did we reach the goal of 11% for minority-owned firms and 7% women-owned firms?
Yes, we actually exceeded that goal. Hold on one second. I'll grab my.
That's what I want. Love to see those numbers so we can see that, because we don't. That's not in our packet. It's not clear.
So to date, the goals that have been met are actually about 13% for minority-owned firms and 12% for women-owned firms.
And can we get a copy of that? Can we see that? Love to see that data. That's the kind of information. Yeah, we'd love to see that. If you could send it to the council afterwards.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank my colleagues for their line of questioning. Firstly, I want to shout out United Minority Contractors. They do very good work, well regarded in our states. It's good to have you with us. I appreciate my colleagues' line of inquiry, but I think it should be said that we do this kind of stuff for all kinds of stuff across our city ad infinitum. We bring in contractors to cut hedges in the middle of highways. We bring in we just spend a bunch of money. We have real estate professionals on staff, but we just spend a bunch of money to get real estate professionals to go look for a potential area for us to build a water treatment facility. So, as a government, the main thing we do is we collect money and we spend money. We don't have the fleet capacity to do all of our street work. If we were to buy enough trucks and hire enough people to do everything we needed to build sidewalks, we wouldn't be a government anymore. We'd be a construction business. And that's the case in any number of areas. I think that in terms of, governments historically, and why I'm comfortable with outsourcing how well we're doing with minority and business on women, is that there's always a temptation to grade yourself on a curve in this type of work. I don't care how well intentioned you are as a government. There's a reason why we don't let students grade their own papers in school. We've always historically, as well-meaning as Durham is, have been tempted as governments to grade ourselves better than what we're doing. So the contract extension, for me, this type of scrutiny I would bring to every contract we've done that falls with, if we have limited capacity within our government to do a number of things, but never enough to do all that's needed, which is why we tax and which is why we spend money on contracts. So I remember when we passed the bond, we were obsessed with making sure that with all of this financial windfall, that minority businesses would participate in it. And we didn't have the capacity within our own city to make sure, because we need people doing that all the time. But as we're dealing with one contract, we need to be looking down the road as well for other work. So we needed our people to be able to do things, but continue to do other things. We don't pass budgets 5 years at a time. We pass a budget every year because we can't anticipate what we're going to need. So we pause, we take a snapshot, we assess. I don't know that I would have wanted to give you $5 million up front without getting an assessment of the work product that we got after, a snapshot or after a certain amount of time to seeing if it was worth extending. But I understand the work. I understand where it emanates from. I'm very comfortable with it. I also understand that on any given day, there are contracts that we'll see today and other contracts. What really gets me are these construction changes, millions of dollars. And then the question is, did we not know we needed the toilets on the left side as opposed to the right side of the building when we first started off? And we spent ridiculous amounts of money on changes and amendments to contracts all the time. And all I'm simply saying is if we're going to bring that level of scrutiny to this one, then we've got a whole bunch of work to do on a bunch of other contracts. I think this work goes directly to a critical value and goal of this city, which is to not only get minority contractors, but also, we're experts at hiring consultants, but also to bring in minority consultants to help us get those minority contractors, because that's become a cottage industry in and of itself, identifying the folk who you need to get. So I'm comfortable with it for what it's worth. I appreciate, and this is our job as council members, but I would just say that there's a whole bunch of money we spend on contract amendments and extensions. And to be quite honest, 6 months later after we spend that money, I don't know what the results are, if we got the desired results. Sometimes it's a year later when they come back and give us a report. But I'm heartened to hear that we've met and exceeded our goals. We have not with Vision Zero, and we're spending money on that. So there's a whole bunch of goals we need to look at and assess whether we're getting the proper bang for our buck. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Councilmember Cook.
Yes, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think you brought up a couple of really good points, and the reason for me bringing this one under particular scrutiny is because unlike those contracts that we do where we contract out an activity, we are contracting out the finding of the person with whom we will then contract out the ability, right? It's like one extra step removed. But this has been really helpful. I would like to see, Deputy City Manager, I would like to see those statistics added to our packet for the public, but I would also like to see that original contract. I think the thing that really struck me reading through this was that the information that we were provided really wasn't really helpful in understanding what was going on and why that increase was needed. So if those two things could get added to the agenda, that would be great.
I've already communicated your
Thank you.
desire for that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. And I'm going to ask a more simple question. The work that this contractor is doing, are there organizations or potential partners in our community, in our network rather, of resources that already do this work? Or do we need to be very specific with an agency to work with us?
Well,
And
I would-
I'll, just a little context I asked because I know that the chamber and the county had done some similar things around trainings and around, creating a network, being able to go out and find, just finding folks to do all types of jobs or fill contracts with local municipalities. I don't know if those things are related or not, but
Well, I would say, Mr. Mayor, that we actually issued a request for proposals for this work. And we did have multiple firms that did propose. And the UMC NC was the one that won out of the request for proposals to select for this service.
okay. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to reiterate Councilmember Cook's comments. I think we had a similar discussion just at our last work session about, I think there's about a workforce contract. Same thing where the backup was simply not sufficient to really fully understand, did we get success from the initial phase of the contract? So I just want to reiterate that request to have a little more backup so we can understand if this is an extension for successful completion of a project. We just want to see how that decision was arrived at. And I agree with Mayor Pro Tem 100%. We get a ton of contracts. We certainly have prerogative to look at any of those, right? It's part of our job, our fiduciary responsibility. And so I appreciate Councilmember Cook pulling this one. I had the same concerns and just want to make sure that as we review contracts in the future, we have that full backup so we can make good decisions as council members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What's that next one? 18? All right, Councilmember Cook. Item number 18, First Amendment Service Agreement for Project Management Consulting Services with Turner and Townsend Heery, LLC.
No one will be surprised to learn that this is kind of similar to the conversation that we were just having. And this is a bit different because, and I'm just sorry, I'm pulling it up right now, but my memory, if my memory serves me, that we already had a contract. This is to enlarge that contract to include the recent recent parks bonds. And so I was just hoping you could talk a little bit about the original contract. And then I'm particularly interested because I know that a lot of outreach work has already been done with the community, and then some preliminary designs, which I know are not buildable as they've been done, but there has been already quite a bit of work put in by city staff. And so how that gets incorporated with this consulting contract.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Henry Prosperi, General Services. The original contract by Turner Townsend Heery had 30 to 40 projects. It was a $1.7 million contract. So this is an amendment to that contract to include specifically the bond projects. And then your second question was, how does the initial work done for those projects get incorporated into this? So we had done, we hired a firm that did the initial planning for the bond projects. And so we're basically using that to start the projects. This specific contract, though, is for professional project management services. So we are going through RFQ processes to bring on the architects and engineers to design those projects. Specifically for the Aquatic Center, we've already selected the architecture firm as well as the construction manager. So the next step is to bring that contract forth to City Council for those professional services and for that pre-construction. And then for the Long Meadow East End projects, we are in the RFQ process to actually select the designers and the construction manager.
Okay, and so for the project management, did we do an RFP, or because we were already contracted with Townsend, Turner and Townsend, did we just expand that contract?
We are expanding their contract. The initial services came from a government procurement contract where they offer those professional services. So the firm was selected from a government procurement contract.
And did we do an original RFP to contract with Turner and Townsend? previously before the bond stuff came up?
Again, that firm came from that government procurement contract that
Okay.
offers those professional services.
Okay, okay. And can you just explain that process to me, how that comes about?
The government procurement?
Yeah,
So the city, the purchasing department, they work with vendors that respond to qualification-based selection. And it's a repository for city staff to use for different services, for professional services, for goods. And so they were a vendor that offered professional project management services on that government procurement contract that we selected from. And we received a proposal and we negotiated their fees.
okay, okay. So just not exactly the RFP process, but sort of with aspects,
I think
similar
that it's
aspects
like
of
pre-vetted vendors that
Uh-huh.
go through that process.
it. Okay. And then you said we'll be seeing the RFPs for the other pieces. And then these folks have been working with us though, and so they are aware of I just don't want to lose or have to redo. I mean, we talked a little bit, and I know this is not exactly what this contract is about, but we talked a little bit about a few weeks ago about community engagement and these things that we're sort of outsourcing and potentially duplicating. And I just don't want to lose all of the effort that has gone into this already. But it sounds like they've been around, they're aware of all that work that's been done.
This firm has been with us for over a year now.
Great.
So they're really just augmenting our project management staff, but we'll be working with the design consultants, incorporating all that pre-planning that was done in the previous phase for the aquatics and for the parks.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Any other questions on this matter? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, number 19. Ratification of 5 fiscal year 2025 festivals, fiscal year 25 festivals and events contracts. The contribution to my gray hairs last year. So, Councilmember Rist.
Yeah, thank you. My question is just simple. I just want to make sure I understand what's going on here. Is this just kind of cleanup? These are contracts that were already approved. We're just sort of ratifying them, or what's the timing of this would be helpful.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem. Rebecca Holmes with the General Services Department. The City Attorney's Office can answer any questions about why the ratification is coming forth, but the services have already been rendered.
That's what I thought, yeah. Is I guess
Good afternoon, Carlos Hernandez with the City Attorney's Office. What was your question?
the question was, so these are contracts have already been executed. The work has already been done. So this is a cleanup here? Or
Yeah, so for the sake of the organizations that had the festivals, we had the city manager execute those contracts to get the funds out. However, the ratification does need to be done by the council in order to comply with state law.
I mean, wouldn't we usually ratify these before they're executed?
Well, if the scope of work of a contract has already been performed, then yes, you would normally ratify them prior to execution. However, doing the way the RFP process happened, there wasn't enough time to execute them prior to these festivals occurring, and the organizations needed to have the funds. So this ratification is checking a box to make sure we comply.
So we essentially paid them and then the contract came later, or?
No. After the execution of the contract, we paid them. But the festival happened without the city's involvement, even though we had given.
Oh, so we're paying them retroactively, essentially.
They were given notice by the city of an award, and so they continued with their festival. And so this is complying with that
So
award.
we followed up with payment and so,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Right.
Full by me, Your Honor, and you as well.
That's full by the full delegation.
Lead off.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll kick off with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
This is actually what gave me gray hairs.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. I'm Kristen Perez from the Parks and Recreation Department.
Kristen, thank you so much for being with us. Good afternoon. Let me firstly just celebrate the incredible thing that Bimbé is. I think it'll be 55 years this year. So double nickels this year. It has been a mainstay on our city's social calendar. It's been a pull from our region each year. I don't know how many times I've had a towel in the front row jumping up and down to some artists out there even before getting elected. So I just want to celebrate how awesome Bimbé is and thank all those folks from all over the state who come to Durham for Bimbé and who plan on coming this May as well. So we know that last year we hit a glitch. Out of 55 years, we hit a glitch last year. And I wanted to firstly say I was pleased. Clearly, we learned some lessons, some of the things that were codified in our contract. Agent must have written confirmation of the artist. We need access to social media platforms. We want the artist to do a video. Those are all great things, and I think they indicate that we've learned. I do have a couple of specific questions, though, and this may not be for you, it may be for the city manager's office. What is the status of our repayment from last year's contract?
Red got up like he knew that question was coming.
Well, actually, I'm Fred Lamar with the City Attorney's Office. I see that the City Attorney, Kim Rayberg's not here right now, but I'll do my best to answer that question. There she is. So could you repeat the question?
Yeah, Councilor Rayberg, I asked, I celebrated Bimbé first, and then I asked, what is the status of the repayment agreement with the city from last year's contract from Bimbé?
Sure. And I actually copied the city council on an email that I just sent to the media about this. So as we all know, Mr. Weeks, who was the contractor last year, defaulted on his ability to deliver on the contract. And in June of last year, the city attorney's office negotiated an agreement with him that involved a repayment plan, as well as him executing what's called a consent judgment that the city could use to enforce payment should he not comply with the repayment plan. He made a $5,000 lump sum payment in June. So started on the payment plan, but quickly fell off the wagon. So in September, the city attorney's office actually recorded that consent judgment, which has been docketed in both Durham and Wake counties for execution, but he appears to be largely judgment proof at this point. There's nothing that we can levy on to collect on the judgment. Based on that, he has reached out to the city to ask about re-implementing the payment plan. We had a brief discussion with the city manager day before yesterday about that. He is amenable to that. It doesn't impact the city's ability to collect on the judgment that it has. So that will remain out there for 10 years or until it's paid. So that's the status of the legal action against last year's contractor.
Thank you very much for that.
Sure.
And just to be clear, this is someone that we've used before in the past. This wasn't somebody that just kind of fell out of the sky. This is someone we had relationship with and a history with. Correct? That's right. You can come back up to that.
Yes, that is correct. We have used him in the past and we're completely successful with him bringing the promised talent.
Okay. So HBCU booking is a pretty reputable company, well known in HBCU circles. Have we given any guidance in terms of? And I got a bunch of letters one year from one of the artists that performed at Bimbé, a bunch. Have we given any, or will we give any guidance to the artists as to the city's preference? First off, communicating it's a family event and preference to radio versions as opposed to explicit versions when they perform. Is that anywhere noted?
I know that there's been a lot of communication. I haven't handled the contract in the past. There's been a lot of communication to specify our interest in that and that this is a family friendly. I know we did run into that a couple of years ago. I do not know offhand if it is in the contract. I know we've added a lot to it to make it stronger. I don't believe that
I looked at the contract. I didn't see it. Yeah, and that because I read it doesn't mean that it's not in there. I could have very much overlooked it, but I would be interested in conveying. And again, not censorship, because all of these artists, there's a reason why they made radio versions to begin with, to have played on air. And I remember I got a bunch of letters about an artist one year. So I would be interested in conveying the family nature of the event And the songs that they do have radio, quote unquote, clean versions of, that those would be our preferred ones as opposed to the explicit versions when they perform. Looking forward. I've already got my towel picked out and spot on the lawn picked out. Looking forward to a great time. And thank you for the incredible work you do, Parks and Rec and all of the folk there. It's a super, super hot festival, and it's one of the things that makes Durham dope, continues to make us dope. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I yield.
Any other questions? So I know what we have in documentation. Just for the sake of me not getting 1,000 phone calls of what are we doing different? How do we keep this? Can you just go through the process of how this works, how to contract, how do we contract someone to find talent?
Definitely. We do an RFP process to go out to everyone so they have a chance to bid on the process. And different groups come to us and say, this is the kind of caliber of act that we can bring to you. And here's kind of a dollar amount that we think that we can fall into. Then staff gets together and does a scoring process looking at kind of history, what they have done in the past, if we think, how they show that they can bring this person and, their past successes. They are scored, and then from there we move forward with the preferred contractor.
So with the RFP, is that our only line of vetting that contractor?
That's how we select the contractor. From there, then there's lots of back and forth with that contractor to say, this is kind of who we want. We want to kind of go after these artists. This is kind of what we're looking for in the interest. But they are selected because we think that they can bring that person or that type of person from the beginning. Then we go back and forth and negotiate with them. They say, we can bring these people at this rate. We can bring, and then we kind of go back and forth with them until we can find someone that we feel solid about within our budget.
Does any council member have direct signing privileges to your budget? Like, can we go in and take the money ourselves and just pay them directly? Or not even council members, could I, as the mayor, sign off? Can I give someone a check? Or can I get access to the money to give it to someone I might know to come and perform?
Not without going through the contract process on some level, I believe. If you're saying, can you find an artist directly and go straight to the artist on behalf of the city and directly contract with an artist versus through a talent agent? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Can I take the money from your budget and go give it to a friend that I might know to perform? Madam Attorney, is that possible?
Yeah, I don't want to put hypotheticals out into the universe that are just not possible.
It's not what?
It's not possible.
Could you say that louder?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is going through city channels of payment. Monies from the city to contractors do not run through city council members, and I don't even want to speak it because it's not a thing in Durham.
I totally agree. However, that's what went out to about 1.8 million people last year. And it had my face next to Monica, and that the mayor took the money and gave it to some guy and whatever they went and bought. That's not possible. It is not possible. Council members do not have access to the city's money. So I just wanted to put that out. I know it's not possible. I wanted to hear it from the attorney. I wanted to have it on the record. I can't believe I went viral last year over that stupidity. So thank you for the RFP process. And this is what I appreciate about a council manager system rather than a strong mayor system, because there are levels of separation. And yeah, thank you. But thanks for the work and the success that we've had in the past. We've never had this issue. To all the staff that I called at 2 and 3 in the morning, saying somebody about to figure this out now. Thank you for answering the call. When we had that glitch once out of 54 times or once out of 54 years. But I did want to highlight the level of vetting, the process. This fell through. We have a process in which we'll be holding them accountable. And I hope that we, as this is communicated to the public, I hope that we are actually communicating what actually happened, how it happens and not, those, as we said, hypotheticals. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I have one more point? And maybe this was discussed. I'm sorry, I had to step away for a second.
Absolutely.
Just that the staff and also the attorney in my office, Sarah Laws, who works with the team at Parks and Rec, they've added a couple of protections into the contract. Most notably, paragraphs 13 and 14. If you look at the contract in On Base this time, they were not in the contracts previously, and they require that in addition to contracting with the booking agent, the city be getting some very public assurances from the talent themselves that, yes, they are committed to the festival. So that's new. We've never had to have that type of assurance in the contract, but I applaud the staff for thinking through that and thinking of ways that you can never control another party, right? If a party's going to breach a contract, they're just going to breach a contract. So you can't ensure that it won't happen, but that was a good way within the confines of how booking agent agreements work for the city to get some sort of assurances, get buy-in from the artist before payments, before the event, and that sort of thing.
I was, as I was preparing for the meeting, and I was looking over this, I can't remember if it's in there or not. And this could very well go back to the process of the RFP, the way it's written. And for whatever reason, I can't pull up my Granicus. Yeah, I can't pull up Granicus. It's freezing on me. Is Michael still here? But is there a way to ensure that the contractor has direct access to the talent rather than the multi-layers of I know someone who may know someone who may know someone?
So that's what I was
That's the
just
language?
referring to.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
that language that just says, hey, within 30 days of signing this contract, we expect to hear from the artist directly. Yes, I'm in. I'm coming to Bimbé in May.
Okay.
And
that is
other types of social media, website, public pronouncements that they are committed to the festival.
I appreciate that. And I think that's going to be the main difference maker. So I appreciate you all's due diligence on that. Yeah. All right.
Don't take none of this personal. It's just one of them days.
Just one of those days. Wow. No pun intended, right? Well, thank you so much. Sorry for the hypothetical, Madam Attorney, but I needed to make sure that was on the record. Oh my gosh. NC beat. What? All right, what's the next one?
25. Councilmember Baker.
25, Councilmember Baker.
All right, Councilmember Baker, pulled item number 25, contract amendment number 1 for stormwater infrastructure repairs, SD 2022-02.
Thank you. So this is an amendment to the contract to add 2 additional projects. Sounds like the projects are within the green and equitable communities areas. These are coming out of the CIP, and one of them is related to the private drainage assistance program. Can you just talk about what that is?
Mr. Mayor, Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. My name is Greg Smith. I'm with the Public Works Department. Your question is in regards to the Private Drainage Assistance Program, PDAP for short. And one of the projects within this addendum is a designated PDAP project. For stormwater on private properties, the city is not responsible for maintaining, replacing those systems. They are a responsibility of the private property owner. The city has developed an ordinance and a program, the Private Drainage Assistance Program, that helps supplement and ease the costs and the burden to property owners to repair their systems. And they work collaboratively with us and our group in making that happen. So it's a cost share effort. The ordinance was revised recently, I believe last year, to make it a little bit more attractive for the private property owners, because the increasing construction costs were showing it to be less attractive, I would say.
Okay, and can you just share, and I'll take a look at this afterward, but what's the share between the private landowner and the city?
Great question. It depends on the type of ownership it is, whether it's a private, single family residence property or whether it's a commercial property. And it's weighted more heavily to the former than the latter. And I believe the current share is 80% city, 20% homeowner with a cap, but I'll have to double check those numbers. I don't have them in front of me.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Item number 27, pulled by Mr. Baker.
Eric, good to see you again.
See you.
Can you just talk about, so items 27 and 28 are related to the City of Durham Metropolitan Network. Can you just a bucket for us to talk about it. Can you just talk a little bit more about that project and where we are and where we're going?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Dwayne Kendall, Assistant Director of Technology Solutions. The first one, 27, is what we would consider as just the normal routine maintenance for our local area network and the existing equipment that exists out in the field in every site. All the network switches, the wireless access points, all the devices that we provide technical support to. This contract is for a managed service provider with much lower costs than if we were to have staff 24/7, 365 to provide these kind of services. So we actually think it would be multiple times more if we were to try to have 3 shifts of 24/7 team members. So this contract is to just amend the existing agreement. Just to let you know, it's the purpose of amending it throughout the life of the contract is kind of similar to what's been said before, is that we can't always forecast new buildings being built and new services like that. So what we do is we go with what we have, and then we just amend contract based on new changes. Like Miss Lake was built, remodeled, and there's a lot of additional network switches and wireless access points that we need to provide service to. So.
And then can we expect additional funding that we need to provide for the City of Durham Metropolitan Network in the coming next year or two?
Yes. What this part of the contract, number 28, is for the actually deployment of the fiber network. So the city's fiber network, where we'll go off our dependency of our existing internet service provider with Spectrum. The design and build to do that work is what the second contract is for. There may be additional cost increases. Carrie, you want to say anything about any additional increases? Yeah. I'm gonna let Carrie come on.
Carrie Good, the Director of Technology Solutions. Yes, there will be some cost increases for the deployment. We are going to have a vendor do monitoring. We're going to create a network operations center to monitor our network. Organizations like Duke already have that, but we're going to be standing up a network operations center that we monitor 24/7. As far as the performance value of our network, that'll be one recurring cost. The lighting of the fiber is what this vendor is going to be doing, lighting the fiber and putting it in production. But then there's another cost for running the network. And that's mainly having a network operations center to monitor the network. We're going to have an agreement with Duke to repair the fiber if the fiber gets cut, because we're in the ground, the conduit is going in the same direction with their network. So if the fiber is cut, more than likely their fiber will be cut as well. So that's the model that we're using.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm interested in this project. It's a unique project that most cities don't have, especially in North Carolina, right? Except for Wilson.
That's correct. And every building will have at least a gig connection to the world. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, anyone else on this item? All right, then by my reckoning, we've discharged all of our pulled items. I believe we have a presentation from staff on HOPWA. Thanks to all the staff that hung around for our pulled items. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Reginald J. Johnson, Director of the Community Development Department. There was a request, a city council request for community development to provide a presentation and update on the HOPWA program, Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, which is one of the entitlements from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And so we are here to respond to that presentation request. Our goals here are to provide the amount of funding, the types eligible activities, how funds are spent, the demographics and beneficiaries, and how we are proceeding with the program. I would just also share that the HOPWA program is a little bit different from other entitlement programs and programs that we administer, because it is the only program that actually, well, one of two, that goes outside the city limits of Durham. This particular program services the Durham eligible metropolitan statistical area, which is 5 counties. And so we're responsible as the administrators for the HOPWA program. I'm going to turn it over to Colin Davis, who is the manager of our homeless system, who is responsible for administering, and his team is responsible for administering the HOPWA program, to share with you. Keep in mind that HOPWA is not a homeless program, though it fits in this particular team, because it has some things that are closely aligned with homelessness, but it is not a homelessness program. I wanted to make sure to emphasize so that is a major distinction that he will talk about. So with no further introduction, I'll turn it over to Colin Davis. Colin.
Thank you, Reginald. Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, Deputy City Manager. Colin Davis, Manager of the Homeless System, Community Development Department. So we're going to go over HOPWA and some of the stuff Reginald already shared. We'll zip through those pieces, and feel free to stop me if you have questions as we go along. I don't mind being interrupted. We got to start with HOPWA at the beginning. So HOPWA was enacted in 1990. It's in the Code of Federal Regulations, giving us all the things you can and cannot do with HOPWA funding. We, as the city of Durham, are the participating jurisdiction. We are the grantee of these funds, and then we choose project sponsors to carry out the activities. We, as the city, do not actually do the work for this. We contract it out, except for right now we are doing a portion of it, and we'll talk about that later. So HOPWA is the only federal program that is dedicated to housing for people living with HIV and AIDS. And as Reginald said, you do not have to be homeless to qualify for HOPWA assistance. You have to be living with HIV and AIDS and low income. In Durham, we do prioritize people who are homeless living with HIV and AIDS for assistance with tenant-based rental assistance. And when you're talking low income, you're talking 80% or below. And our priority is that 30% and below when we're targeting resources to get it to those who are really most in need. And not everybody in the household has to be living with HIV and AIDS. You have to have one person to qualify. So let's talk about eligible activities. In HOPWA, there are big categories in which you can spend the funds, starting with housing information services, which talks about counseling, housing counseling, information, referring, and locating housing. Resource identification, which talks about coordinating systems. So that's one of the eligible expenses we can use to help coordinate the 5 counties in our eligible metropolitan statistical area. Funds can also be used for acquisition, rehab, conversion, lease and repair of facilities for projects that specifically assist households living with HIV and AIDS. So you couldn't use these funds for an affordable housing unit that would be open to the general public at all. You can also use them for new construction costs, should you want to, for households living with HIV and AIDS. Tenant-based or project-based rental assistance, just what it is. It's just subsidizing rents using typical methodologies of 30% of a person's household income could go to this, going towards the cost of the rent. The rents must meet fair market rent standards, which are established by HUD, minus the utility assistance. So you're looking at a gross rent, fair market rent minus the utility assistance is what the total amount could be paid to the landlord, with a mix of payment coming from the tenant-based rental assistance and the program participant themselves. We do tenant-based rental assistance. City of Durham uses that. We don't do project-based, but that's something that could be looked into in the future. Short-term rent mortgage utility payments. These can be used for up to 26 weeks in a 52-month period, or 52-week period, sorry. It's very short-term, and it's to help provide stability for households who might be missing work due to being in the hospital. So this is a way to keep people from losing their homes and being able to keep viral load suppression down. Supportive services, we do spend money on supportive services in our EMSA, which helps link people to health, mental health, permanent housing placement, which can also cover security deposits and first month rent to help people get into affordable housing, daycare, personal assistance, the list goes on. Operating costs, if you have a building that is serving folks who are living with HIV and AIDS, those operating costs could be included in this. We do have to look at who's eligible. We talked about it a little bit. Must be living with HIV and AIDS and low income. The household, regardless of income, is eligible. Anybody in the household could receive assistance sort of by virtue of a parent who has HIV and AIDS and is low income. The children who don't have HIV and AIDS would benefit as living in that household that might be covered by a tenant-based rental assistance payment. And then if you've got people living in the neighborhood who, if let's say you're doing a community-based HIV project, people in the neighborhood could come participate in that. All HOPWA activities that are done must be part of the consolidated plan that we as a jurisdiction submit every 5 years to HUD for approval. And annually, we have to submit an annual action plan. So any expense that comes from HUD must be delineated in both of those. And if you don't, we have a compliance issue. If we wanted to change it, those require substantial amendments that we go back to HUD and say, hey, 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, we didn't think we wanted to do it. We want to do this now. We need to do a substantial amendment in our consolidated plan and then the annual action plan for the year of HOPWA funding. We're planning to use that to ensure that we could stay in compliance with federal regulations. Currently, right now, we're using HOPWA funding for tenant-based rental assistance, short-term mortgage utility payments, supportive services, and permanent housing placement. Those are the only activities that are listed in our CON plan and our annual action plan as eligible expenses. So this sort of looks at our 5-county eligible metro statistical area, which includes Chatham, Durham, Granville, Orange, and Person. And this sort of gives you an idea. This is not how many people we are currently serving in the project, because the project doesn't delineate how many are Durham, how many are Granville. It's how many are eligible in this EMSA. So the total universe of people living with HIV per our public health database is 145 people are living with HIV in Chatham, 1,900 in Durham, 240 in Granville, 336 in Orange, 117 in Person. And then those who are living with AIDS, you'll see on the right hand of that chart of 57, 756, 112, 138, and 50, respectively, living with full-blown AIDS in those communities. So it's our job to make sure that any of those households who are in those categories and low income have access to services. Now, how much money are we talking about? And you'll see a big jump in money from 2019 to 2024. And we had a little extra money in 2020 due to HOPWA COVID funding. We got a little extra money that came in at $70,000 to assist with short-term mortgage utility assistance. The HOPWA amounts starting in 2019 you'll see it sort of goes relatively flat through 2019 to 2021. And then you see a big jump. And this is where we get into the modernization that HOPWA changed their formulation. So this is what we've looked at. Then we get into tenant-based rental assistance. How much have we spent in count from 2020 through December 31st, 2024? We have spent over $1 million on tenant-based rental assistance, which translated into 28 unduplicated households. Short-term mortgage utility assistance, 118 households benefited from that for $431,000. Supportive services, 162 unduplicated households. And permanent housing placement, which is a one-time assistance of just over $49,000 for 49 unduplicated households. So these are where the money's gone and how many people. It is possible a permanent housing placement person may also get a tenant-based rental assistance because those two could go together. So you can't really add these up and say, oh, this is how many total unduplicated people were served with these pots of money, because there are places where there is layering, where tenant-based rental assistance, everybody in tenant-based rental assistance is eligible for supportive services. So your biggest place of looking, if you wanted to get your best case of unduplicated, would be looking at your supportive services, because everybody would have been eligible for that at some point. Looking at demographics of those who are being served by our HOPWA funds, 134 people that were served during this time period were male, 77 were female, 2 identified as transgender, 190 identified as Black or African American, 14 white, and 4 Hispanic or Latino, Latina. And looking at those data points, there's a few others. I didn't pull out the whole piece. There's 1 Native American, for instance. I pulled out any number greater than 1 is what I pulled into this chart. So if you try and add these up and back them in, there may be a discrepancy, and that's why. Looking at age groups, we see the bulk of those served are 35 and older. We are seeing a growing number of 25 to 34-year-olds coming into this, but you'll see the majority of people in the system are being affected in the older demographics. And as this country ages, the HOPWA population ages as well. We are looking at money that has yet to be put out for bid, because we get an allocation every year from HUD. So this is looking at funding that has not yet been put into contract, and we're getting ready to put out an RFP, and we're getting ready to amend a contract with SS to finish out the rest of this fiscal year that they need money on. So the RFP we're planning to put out currently with $677,000 of tenant-based rental assistance, $323,734 of short-term mortgage utility assistance, $339,225 for supportive services, and $27,382.36 for permanent housing placements, and roughly $330,000 for everything other than tenant-based rental assistance for a contract with TSS.
Okay,
Yes,
so
Councilman.
this is money that will be spent of funds that have already been received. This is not what we're expecting in the future. This is monies that we have in hand.
So, kind of. HOPWA is a reimbursable contract. So we have grant agreements with HUD. And when HUD gives you a grant agreement, they give you a grant agreement in calendar year 2024. And you have from 2024, 3 years to spend that allocation. So by 2027, all of that money would have to be drawn. If there's delays, there's a process that you can go through and apply to HUD and ask for submit a spending plan, and they'll extend the period of performance to draw the funds. So these are funds that we have grant agreements from HUD to be able to use. It's an allocation, exactly. And HUD, we've got a signed agreement and a GPO in place, the grant project ordinance, in place to be able to execute and move forward with an RFP. The interesting thing, HOPWA does not require the grantee, us, to go through an RFP process. We are allowed to choose project sponsors. However, state law, the city attorney's office brought it to our attention saying, hey, yes, HOPWA allows this, but state law says you actually have to go through a procurement process every 3 years. So that triggered the, we gotta go follow the state law, more restrictive, triggering the RFP. And we just need to go do an RFP because we've got more providers. And we just brought in the 5th jurisdiction, Granville, was just new to our EMSA, starting with our calendar year 2022 HOPWA allocation. Does that answer your question? Sure. So the RFP that'll come out will be focused on those tenant-based rental assistance, short-term mortgage utility assistance, supportive services, and permanent housing placement. We are planning to do a second RFP with we'll have to do an amendment to the consolidated plan and annual action plan, but to use some funding in future years to develop our strategic plan, because we haven't done a strategic plan or needs assessment since 2019, 2020. When I first started, we were finishing that one. So it's time to update that and go back and look at it, do some system mapping. We'll bring in some identification of resources, community engagement, and kind of create a continuum. Like we've got a continuum of care for the homeless system. Because we've got 4 counties, we need to sort of build out that continuum for all 5 counties of the EMSA for HOPWA, so it's more streamlined. And then we'll be bringing in a temporary employee because when Central Piedmont Community Action went out of business, we had to bring tenant-based rental and assistance in-house and are in the process of making sure landlords are paid and caught up on payments. Questions?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So I know we just had a legislative update on this. Do you foresee any potential, well, I guess there's no way to tell, but I will ask anyway, do you see any potential stoppage of these funds or this type of support?
I don't know. I mean, that's the best answer I can give at this point is if there's no way to know. There's a lot of language in HOPWA that specifically deals with the LGBTQIA+ community.
Yeah.
And a lot of things talking about equity. And when you look at our demographics, we are disproportionately serving a group of people who identify as Black and African American, similar to the homeless system, right? You've got equity issues in both of these places, and how it plays out, that's above my pay grade.
Yeah, Director Johnson, when we had that legislative call recently with providers across North Carolina, I believe it was, shortly after that, I was speaking with someone, and someone said to them of a particular demographic, of a particular political interest, this is why we need to end all of this equity BS. Why do people with AIDS get special treatment for housing and not other people? And it was one of the most ignorant things I've ever heard. But it's that mindset that worries me on, that goes all the way up the chain. And that's why I asked this question. But I can't remember everything that was shared on that call. Do you have any insight on this?
So thank you for that question, Mr. Mayor. So no, I do not have any formal insight other than, we have heard from our standpoint and from official context, HUD for the most part has gone radio silent on things of this nature. And so we have not received any communication one way or the other saying one thing or the other. There have been some actions. I'll have Colin to talk about the one where there was an well, basically from our standpoint, an RFP, but a NOFO that was pulled. If you would share with them.
So shortly, I don't remember what date it was, but HUD had posted an RFP for youth homeless demonstration projects. and it had been posted on the HUD website for people to apply. It was pulled down shortly after January 20th. And the question is whether or not that youth homeless demonstration project will get put back up again. Nobody knows. One train that's been coming out is it was pulled down to scrub all DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion language that was in there talking about LGBTQ community and persons of color, and it would get republished after that. The HUD Exchange, I went in the HUD Exchange the other day to look for some information. And the HUD Exchange is kind of our resource library, if you will, for all things HUD related. And there is mention to a Supreme Court hearing where the Supreme Court talks about equal access rules, where people are allowed to be assigned dorm space by the gender in which they identify. So that is there, but all the videos, all the guidance on how to implement that has been pulled off the HUD Exchange. And there isn't a way to get to that information right now, except for there's a paragraph that says Supreme Court, and I don't remember the case, forgive me. This case sort of says you have to do this. And after that, the information is no longer available on the HUD Exchange website.
Just to add to that, and colleagues, I'm going to pass in just a second. Are we looking at, so I did get word that there were keyword searches going through the federal programs right now, literally as we speak, as the alternative president is doing. Are we looking at changing our verbiage to get the same outcome? And some of the, I guess you really don't know what to apply for. It's still too early and there's so many things changing.
So I will say, if I may, in the homeless system, we talk about equity a lot in the homeless system. The Supreme Court ruled against the universities on using diversity as college admissions. I don't remember that case, but you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, affirmative action.
Yeah, the affirmative action case. So when that happened, we were in the process of looking at our coordinated entry policies and procedures because our whole homeless system has been based on equity and ensuring we have equity in the system. And I gotta say, we've got the smartest group of people, like known to man, working on homelessness in Durham and the best team working on it. So it's like, we need to get to equity, not call it equity, and we need to look at how do we do this without talking about equity. So started asking different questions about what types of things impact everybody, but may have a disproportional impact in certain groups that may help us get to equity. Our homeless system is still working at equity using new questions. So for instance, instead of asking, race, gender, ethnicity questions, we'll ask, do you have certain ailments? Sickle cell, do you have kidney disease? Do you have things? Kidney disease impacts a wide variety of folks. It's not a race specific, but it does disproportionately impact African Americans, maybe a little bit more. So these are sort of ways that we can get to the same end result, but we're including everybody. And it's been playing out very well in our system analysis. So I think that's the way we're going to be moving.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you for that. Councilmember Cook.
I'm going to totally veer that direction. So you listed the priorities, or not priorities, but the eligible uses. And I know that they have to be decided in the consolidated plan, but how do we prioritize and distribute money between those eligible activities?
In terms of how do we determine how much money goes to each activity?
Yeah, which activities we're going to use and also how much goes to those.
That has historically been based. So with tenant-based rental assistance, we had a goal of getting a certain number of households into tenant-based rental assistance. And we had to look at what was the average number, what was the average amount of subsidy going to per household. So you take that number times your goal number of households to be assisted to come up with how much you want for tenant-based rental assistance. Our short-term mortgage utility assistance, STRMU, what we call it, is based on what have we done in the past. And you sort of anticipate what you anticipate the numbers looking like in the year going forward, because all of these dollar amounts have to be put into the annual action plan. And if you shift those dollars up or down, it'll trigger either a minor or a substantial amendment to the annual action plan to move money up or down in those columns. So we put them in there, and as we work our way through the year, sometimes it's like, oh, we actually needed more permanent housing placement and didn't need as much supportive services because it was staff turnover, for instance, in supportive services. And then there's an amendment that has to happen and a budget change that has to happen.
So how did we choose those four? Because that's not the only four eligible places for this money to go. How did we choose those four? And then who also is looking at setting the number of households for the tenant-based rental assistance? Understanding that we're distributing it for multiple counties. So I'm just curious, like, who is involved in setting those priorities and how they get set?
So a lot of that goes back to, some of this was identified in our needs assessment back in 2020 that was completed to sort of lay out what we needed to do. That was part of the current con plan that we're in. And then we've got the modernization where we're looking at what are the current needs, what's the current data. And we've been working on that with every year. We have annual action plans. There's public hearings that are part of that we take information in from that. We talk with the providers who are doing the work to see how many people are on the waiting list for vouchers, how many people are being served by which program, and do our best to line up the money based on those recommendations that we're hearing from the data, where we collect the data from.
Let me also chime in, council member, because Colin is exactly right. But I think the question you may be asking is, how did we get on this path to begin in terms of how we have the breakdown? And one of the major pieces is what we inherited from Duke University and the statewide system when we received, I'll never forget it, one day just received a letter, you're now awarded HOPWA, and begin the transfer from Duke. Well, Duke, as you know, is a healthcare provider. So their programs that they emphasize are going to pick the ones that are more so aligned with their mission. And when it was transferred to us, we have to keep serving those people that they were serving, so that continued the foundation of where we are in terms of our program alignment. Because the amount of money, we couldn't necessarily make major shifts. But as we begin to considering getting additional money, we can begin to consider some shifts. One of the things that HUD was particularly interested in when we were awarded HOPWA was the idea of including HOPWA with housing. But we have not been able to make that shift just yet. But that is something that we're looking at.
Yes, you can make those changes, and it's important to note, so that future RFP is made up of the 23 and 24 allocations. So those last two allocations that are like $1 million a piece have not been put out or are in the or they haven't been put into an RFP, and part of that money, 330,000 of it, is in the process of being put into contract now. So we're still spending out. Durham Housing Authority had the tenant-based rental assistance program, and they chose to not renew it because it was a very nuanced TBRA program, which is very different than their standard tenant-based rental assistance HCV program. There's a lot different set of rules.
Yeah, we're about to talk about that.
And to track 40, 25 or 40 vouchers is very tricky.
But I guess I'm still not getting an answer to my question, which is like, how and who decides the priorities when we get this federal money? Obviously, we have to comply with these federal regulations. I understand that, but who is setting the priorities? How are we distributing the money between these priorities? how are we setting these numbers? Who's doing that?
So we make suggestions as the homeless team, and part of the annual action plan process gets put out there. And part of that is to hear back from the community about these numbers. We take that feedback and would make adjustments. Over the years, when we've done this, feedback on changing those numbers that are eligible to be there haven't been. Our goal has been to try and increase tenant-based rental vouchers. We have also struggled over the last several years to find landlords willing to take third-party payments. We've had a gap. Landlords are starting to come back on taking third-party payments now. But when we had the eviction moratorium, we lost a lot of landlords who used to partner with us because they sold out to out-of-state conglomerates who own things. So a lot of our local landlords are now coming back. We're also now in the process of getting our Forever Home Durham units are now coming online, and they're very eager for third-party payments to make their pro formas work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to delve into it too much more, but I guess I keep asking the same question and I don't feel like I'm getting the answers, which is like, we make suggestions. Who is we? Is this a part
Community
of,
development makes a suggestion.
this is coming
as
from
part of the annual action plan.
for all these 5
presentation.
counties without input from those 5 counties?
Which
we're just hopeful for feedback.
take it from the needs assessment that was done in 2020 that sort of set the trajectory.
Mhm.
And then we have to, as Reginald said, we have to continue, there's certain programs we have to continue doing. So then we're looking at, okay, how much money do we have? We also have, when you're also putting money into a system and we had so many vendors, you have to look at what has been spent previously and what could realistically be spent in a year. Because when you start running into problems is if I gave $1 million to an organization, they can only spend 300,000, then it's like, oh, contract ends. We either have to do an extension of that contract for time, or the contract ends, the money has to be unencumbered, and you've got to get exactly the right like to the penny, how much money's being encumbered, which might take 30 to 90 days after the contract ends for all the reconciliation to happen, to be able to unencumber that, to put that unspent money into the next contract. So there's a lot of art and science to it of trying to get the right amount of money to the right group that can actually be spent and deployed in a reasonable manner and not have a bolus of money at the end of the year that's just sitting there that you can't do anything with, and then trying to unencumber and create a new contract. And when you do that, you run the risk of losing the money because it either doesn't make it into the next new contract or your period of performance ends. And HUD's like, well, we don't want to continue that. Does that help?
That's a perfect leeway into my next question, which is, are we losing money? Have we returned any money? And if not, can you help me understand why the totals are so drastically different from the money that we've been awarded versus the money that we've spent? And I understand not all of it's been contracted, but we are looking at, and I understand the 3-year periods, but we are looking at the same yearly 2019 through 2024, and the numbers are, it's less than half that we have spent. So is there money going back? Have we lost any from not?
There was $8,000 of 2018 money off the top of my head that was returned of admin. And that's a number that is not, it's, when you go back and look at the 2022 to 2024 total allocation, that's the total allocation. I didn't put the admin in there. There's a 10% admin. So if you add 10% back in of that whatever it is, so there's $459,000 of admin that's not accounted for in those spending things, because that the admin is sort of going, that sort of helps to cover some of our expenses, that helps cover some of the project sponsors' expenses. 3% comes to the city, 7% admin goes to the project sponsor. So it's not a whole lot of admin going anywhere. That's not included in those expense sheets. And the rest of it has been either, this all came from what has been drawn. So the city is in the process of drawing funds that are owed to us. Money has been put into contract and we're in the process of paying out contract money, but we can't draw the money until we have paid it and then make the draw. So we've only drawn what we've been able to draw and get reimbursed. So that $1,066,328 and that $1,103,729 has not been touched. That can't be drawn yet because we haven't contracted it or spent any of that yet.
So the difference, this is like,
It's a lot smaller than that 50% is looking.
a lot small. Wait, say that again?
So you're saying 4.5 million here,
Yeah, 4.6. Yeah.
and then we spent 2.1. So
Right.
add, so I'd have to go do the math, but add 10%, you'd take 42,900, 48,300, 54,000, and 96,000. Add that back into this amount spent for the admin. So you're adding probably another 100,000 or well, more than 100,000.
Wait, sorry, I thought you said that the admin was not included in
Admin's-
awards and it was also not included in our
Admin's
estimate.
included in the HOPWA amount here.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm saying, is it's included there
Okay.
as the total award amount. It's not included in the amount spent. I just didn't put the admin line item on there, which is at 10%. Because I was more focused on what are we doing in the community with the money versus the de minimis 10%.
And then the additional difference you're
Would
saying
be
is from the
funding that we
2023,
have
2024.
would be 23-24 money or any of the 2021 or 2022 money that we have not drawn down from the lock system yet. But we've spent it. We just have, we, the city, have not been reimbursed yet. This is all coming out of the official record, for lack of a better term, the Integrated Disbursement Information System, IDIS of HUD, of showing what we've drawn.
Okay. And the HOPWA CV amount, if you go back up one
Yep.
slide, you just explain the difference between the amount and then the CV.
Sure. So during COVID, HUD put out a lot of COVID response money. So we had Emergency Solutions Grant COVID money. We had about $2 million of ESG COVID money. We got $70,340 of HOPWA COVID money in the 2020 allocation year. And that HOPWA money had to be spent within a certain time period to be used. So we spent the HOPWA money, the HOPWA CV money, before we spent the regular HOPWA money, which created a delay, because that money was also intended for short-term mortgage utility assistance. And there were some waivers that allowed that money to be used longer than the normal amount of weeks that are set.
Okay.
So we spent that 70,000 is completely spent and gone.
And do we have a caper for that we could see?
The caper for, yeah, I can,
HOPWA funds?
yes, I can email that, or we can get that to
We get
you.
that added.
Mhm.
And then
It's an Excel spreadsheet. Like the HOPWA caper looks nothing like any other caper.
really,
That, yes, it's quite possibly the most convoluted HUD system for HOPWA accounting ever. But it's a spreadsheet with multiple tabs and sheets, but we can get that for you.
and then I've got two more things and I'm jumping around. The HOPWA next steps, we talking about developing an RFP so that we can have a strategic plan. Who's going to write the RFP and who's going to review the submissions? And what does that process look like?
Sure, the RFP would come out of our office or out of community development, would draft the RFP. And then we'll put together a scoring committee that will include not just people in community development. We don't ever do scoring on any of the homeless projects by just us and the homeless team. We bring in outside folks.
Okay. I think what worries me about this is that not that I don't trust y'all's team, but we are a pretty limited team, community development, and y'all are staffed to do specific things. But like this scope is large, right? I mean, there's a lot of people affected by this in Durham, but there's also 4 other counties that we have to think about. And I am concerned because I'm not hearing that there's like a lot of community feedback and engagement that happens. And I don't mean like after the fact. I mean like beforehand when we are developing these priorities, when we are developing these RFPs, because like you talked a little bit about data, but how data is gathered and how it's presented makes numbers look and function differently. We all know this, right? And I know that there are community groups that have come forward. I know that there's folks working in these spaces, and I know that they're not being included in this stuff. And so it gives me pause. And we don't have to address that right now. I just want to say it out loud that like, I've been hearing this a lot from the community, and I also work with some of these in my other capacity, and I know that that is the case. I know that the folks that are accessing some of these resources, first of all, it's hard to know to find them. Folks are having trouble getting to them. And there seem to be like obscene barriers in accessing them, if you even know about them. And then also that once you access them, there's not a lot of like community engagement, and their voices are not being incorporated. So I'm concerned about that. But I'd like to pivot to something that you said earlier, and I really want to talk about who is distributing the money for the vouchers, because if you do a little bit of a deep dive, it's not even that deep, a little bit of a shallow dive on the internet, what you're going to find is that our vouchers were distributed by a nonprofit that has since closed its doors. But before it did that, all of the people that moved from DHA with the HOPWA vouchers either were fired or arrested for fraud. And so we've got this like long history that's very, very public. And I don't feel like we've ever gotten answers about like where it was moved to and what the reaction was and how we're making sure that that federal money is kept safe. And that also that the landlords are getting paid, because I heard you say that people are not accepting vouchers. And the reason that people are not accepting vouchers is because they're tired of working with these agencies that aren't paying them timely, or there's been other miscommunications, and that's a huge issue. It's not just that they're not accepting vouchers.
Great question. So when DHA gave us several months' notice, they were not going to do vouchers effective June 30th, 2023. And we began a diligent search and contacted every other housing authority in the 5-county EMSA. We contacted any agency who had done tenant-based rental assistance of any kind, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, anything. I think it was 30 or 36 different agencies we contacted to find out who would be interested in being able to carry out tenant-based rental assistance for the HOPWA program. Two agencies said, we're interested. And then we're sitting there, okay, well, do we need to RFP this, or how do we make a decision? And as we were having that conversation, the phone rang. One of the two said, we're out. This really doesn't fit our mission because we only work in Durham. Trying to do this outside of Durham doesn't fit us. We were left with one, Central Piedmont Community Action. At that point in time, Central Piedmont didn't have a HOPWA program. They were doing tenant-based rental assistance, rapid rehousing for balance of state with federal money. They were doing federal money like on a grand scale. They had offices in 3 of our 5 EMSA counties. They didn't have the people that you're talking about who were arrested on their staff. We entered into contract, we as a city entered into contract with them. Then they had to go hire an entire staff to do the HOPWA tenant-based rental assistance. And during that period, we had to get records from DHA and transfer those records from DHA to the new provider. And if you've ever tried to transfer records and all these different things, it's like a database of information and reconciling. And the new vendor has to set up payment abilities and be able to make this happen. So Central Piedmont, we got through that. There was a delay in the transition of those records because we started that work July 1, but the records didn't get we were transferring as quickly as it can. They're trying to stand up as quickly as we can, trying to reach out to the landlords, calculating rents, and making sure we had the right people. Because DHA also agreed to keep some of the HOPWA participants who no longer needed the supportive services on a regular housing choice voucher, which would free up some more HOPWA money, which we were grateful for. So it wasn't like, here's 20 people and they're all going. It was like, here's 20, 15 are going. Here are the 15. And then some of those records, it's like, wait, this isn't the right record. And going back and getting the right records. Central Piedmont then went out of business with no notice to us. We literally were in their office having a normal technical assistance meeting with them, which we were doing a lot of regular hand-holding and walking through. And they didn't mention anything. The next day, it's posted on our website, all of our staff are furloughed. So we were in the office the day before this happened, and they mentioned nothing to us. So one of our providers, the North Carolina Coalition to End Homelessness, also worked with them on balance of state ESG funds. And they called us and said, hey, do you know about this? So we do now. At that point, we quickly got in touch with them, and we went over and retrieved all of the tenant-based rental assistance records and brought them to our office at CDD. We at CDD were like, we've got to be able to do this. So we knew we were going to put out an RFP for a new group starting July 1. And to be able to do all this transitioning, we found out landlords had been entered into contracts with, but hadn't gotten paid. So we at CDD now had to go out and reach out to 15, 16 landlords. Please register as a vendor with the city. So we as the city have been paying and catching everybody up on rent, paying the late fees, using a separate set of funding to be able to make sure that we make our landlords whole, rebuilding the relationships. And because we as a city have it, it will make our transition, because we don't have a contract that's necessarily going to end, we can sort of smoothly move money over in a gradual process when the new RFP begins and avoid this. So we're in the process of getting caught up on a whole lot of stuff that fell through cracks since June 30th or July 1st, 2024.
Yeah. That's awful. I mean, I know that story
There's nothing we
happened.
could do about
I know,
it.
and
And
I
like
know
I said,
it's
we had a
exactly what happened.
contract.
'Cause I also saw the message that was like, everyone is furloughed, and I was like, cool. So I saw that I have it screenshotted in the world. I guess, yeah, I mean, there's so many issues here because when the ball is dropped, and I'm not saying that it sounds like y'all had to pivot really quickly, and so this is not an attack on y'all, but when the ball is dropped for that long a period of time and we have landlords who don't get paid for that long a period of time, what we see is like real fallout and real consequences to tenants. And I understand that we're now trying to make the landlords whole, and like that is a valid goal, but those consequences to the folks who are living with HIV/AIDS, who already had those vouchers, and they were the ones that needed more assistance, right? Because they were the ones that they needed the extra resources because they didn't get their vouchers transferred to a normal housing choice voucher. And they ended up in eviction court, some of them.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, yeah, so anyway, it's just something to like keep in mind, is that like those are real consequences for those folks. I'm also curious, since we have taken over that distribution, you said 15 to 16. I think the number was larger for the number of vouchers that we were distributing or that we put money towards.
Over the time of the contract.
And
From
so
2024 to 28.
how many of those vouchers are active now, and are we taking applications? Are we actually moving through applications for folks trying to access vouchers?
So right now we are trying to get caught up with this transition. And part of the challenge is Central Piedmont was continuing the work after July 1st, and then it stopped. So they were putting people into units with agreements to pay rent, but didn't actually pay the first month rent or a security deposit. We didn't find that out until October, November, that, hey, somebody got put in my unit in September, and now it's December, and I never got any money from, I was like, okay. So now we're finding that. To your point, Councilmember Cook, yes, had folks been taken to eviction court? Yes. As soon as we took it over, we sent letters to every landlord that we had record of saying, hey, we understand this happened. You will be made whole. The city of Durham is taking this on. We are going to work with you. Please hold off on any evictions. Please call Colin Davis, Melva Henry, or Reginald Johnson, and explained as best we could. There were some landlords who still filed, and then we called when the tenant said, hey, I got this eviction notice. We called and they said, we got it. We'll put it on hold. We're not doing it. To my knowledge, nobody in the HOPWA program was evicted. They were all, like, every one of them is in the process of being paid or has been paid.
And so are we taking applications for new people?
Right now, we're trying to finish getting caught up and getting because not all of the landlords, I think all of the landlords are now set up as vendors. Getting set up as a vendor in the city is not a fast, easy process. There is a process to it. And some landlords, if you're a small, not technologically savvy person, it requires a little more hand-holding to do that. So we have, some landlords that took a little longer to get into the system. And we're in the process of trying to bring in additional staff so that we have some capacity to add to take on those applications.
We are planning to sit on this.
We're not planning to sit on it forever.
No, I mean, but we're planning to have it in the city as we're planning.
Not forever.
No.
No. Our goal is to put it out as part of the RFP that would start July 1. Like, we're in the process of putting together that RFP to request proposals for another entity to take this off of the city's plate. The city should not be in the business of writing checks every month.
Yeah.
We just did it because there wasn't another option that quickly. We had to be able to disperse checks immediately. And when we talked about it, the best and fastest way to make landlords whole and avoid people living with HIV and AIDS of losing housing was to bring it in-house. It was something none of us felt comfortable doing, but it was the best. It was the best of the worst options.
Well, and I would just say this, one of the things that was most important is that we keep the program going. And so one of the things that we decided, and I made that decision, that we would work to bring it in-house. And that versus trying to contracting with another vendor, that we would make sure that the program kept going as best that we could. And so that's what we set about to do. And so we are working to that goal.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing I'm thinking about is that it becomes more costly then to retroactively fix the issue because we've got added fees, we've got late fees, we've got all of this extra stuff that would have been accumulated in the time that like Central Piedmont was doing whatever they were doing. And so this might be an attorney question, but is there, because now I feel like we're gonna have to draw more money from this HOPWA fund, and also because we are not able to take applications. I see y'all shaking your heads, but I'm assuming that if we just paid for our vouchers at a normal rate and we didn't have to pay back months and months and months of late fees and all of these other things in order to make people whole and fix ledgers and that sort of thing, and we could also we're also missing out on people that we could take in as potential voucher holders because we're having to deal with this mess, whether there's any methodology for recouping any of that loss by the city. Does that question make sense?
Not entirely to me, but
Okay.
I'm sure to Aaron it does, so we'll look into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can share, HOPWA does not allow, HOPWA funds cannot be spent on late fees. So the late fees are being paid for out of, I believe it's a community development general operating budget. So like this is coming out of our operating budget to cover the late fees. And the late fees are not a huge dollar amount. Like we're talking, a lot of the late fees are like $50 a piece. So you're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars in late fees.
Yeah, I mean, I still think
and
it's
we're-
money
and
that we
we're-
shouldn't have spent, right?
I don't disagree,
Not to
but there's
y'all.
only so much you can do when a vendor just all of a sudden disappears.
Right, hence my question, no matter where the money is coming from, I am curious to know about that, because it is still money, and again, we are fiduciaries, and so like, and it's not our fault, of course, but we also are, the other piece of this that I'm really worried about is that we're missing the opportunity to lease up other people because we're having to sort of deal with a mess that has landed in the city's plate, and I'm also, as always, concerned, and I know y'all are working on it, but like, we then had to immediately take over something that our staff was not prepared to do. Like you were talking that Central Piedmont didn't have the staff in-house to do it. They had to bring folks in. Like we also don't have the staff in-house to do this. And so, and we're also like then delayed in being able to utilize this HOPWA funding, which to the mayor's point earlier, like we don't really know where this money is going in the future. And so it feels to me like any delay in leasing people up or utilizing that money, it is a potential penalty for us. And it has real impact on people in the community too. So that's just something I'm thinking about.
No, I would concur with that, but I would also say that one, we are engaged with our attorney on this matter.
Okay.
I'll say it like that. We do have to get records, which we're still owed some records. And when we were proceeding in that manner. I do appreciate what you're saying about people and new people in the program. And I do appreciate what you're saying about us not having the capacity to just take this on and run with it 100% and have everything be perfect.
Yep. I know there's no answer. It's just me.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking aloud, but the other piece of that being the community engagement, I do really want to make sure that that is heard. And
No,
so,
when we hear that, and also that's the reason we do the needs assessment. That's the reason we engage in that process to be able to do that. We did it before with those who were involved at that time, and then with those who are involved in this time. That's the reason we have to do that every periodically.
I'm happy to get you a copy of the last needs assessment, but we were just looking at like Accra Care, Duke, Balance Estate. We had a lot of input from a lot of stakeholders that work with it, but they were all part of that original 2019, 2020-ish timeframe that we did that last needs assessment. They were all at the table and contributed to that.
okay. And if we could make sure,
So I can
that gets distributed.
yeah, I can
that'd
get
be
you, so the caper you would like and the last needs assessment. And then the other thing just to keep in mind is HOPWA is, while it falls under homelessness, I'm the manager of the homeless team. And we've got 5 people sort of working on homeless specific things and one person trying to manage HOPWA for 5 counties. So when all of a sudden this fell on our lap, we're in the process of saying we need, even if this didn't fall on our lap, we need another HOPWA person in the piece, which is part of a future budget request, and bringing in a temp to sort of help be able to get to where you're going. There is a plan. It's how fast can the plan move? And, hiring is a process. It's not something that you can just, boom, I got somebody today. And it's a pretty specialized skill set to be able to pull it off,
Right.
to bring somebody in.
Okay, 30 minutes later, I'm done with my questions. Thank you.
Colleagues, I'm going to come to you. Councilmember Rissa saw you earlier.
Yeah, I got a single question here. The first thing I just want to say, I want to thank the mayor and management for putting this on the agenda. I know we've talked about doing deeper dives on, this is critical work, critical funding for folks in our community living with HIV/AIDS. So having a better understanding of what's going on with HOPWA is just one example of how we need to do periodically these deeper dives to really understand this stuff. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate Councilmember Cook. Right, that's right. No, I credit, yes.
No, I'm taking the credit.
Yeah.
Keep it like it was.
You did ask for this, and I appreciate your leadership on HSAC. So my question is this. So we started getting emails late or last fall about this from folks in the community saying we're concerned about mismanagement or underutilization of HOPWA funds, right? So then we're now 6 months later. So I guess my question is, number one, how should we high level, when we hear from folks, hey, we're not utilizing these funds, how should we message that on the council, number one? And I got to follow up, but how do we message that in a very simple, direct, succinct way? Because we had a lot of detail here, but essentially folks are concerned, they want to know. So how do we message that?
So what I would say, and what I do say, is that we are serving for people who are qualified under HOPWA. We're serving them. We're serving them now. We do have an increased allocation, and that we're developing another plan with the RFP to have those funds distributed as well. In terms of mismanagement, I would not say that of course, I'm biased, we're not mismanaging.
Yeah, actually,
the funds.
a little bit of that, but just the underutilization. That's the piece I'm mostly concerned about. Well,
I would say this and be candid. Based upon that, we have a provider that stopped on us abruptly. It's not most efficient that we are in the way that we are distributing the funds. There are more efficient ways, and we're transferring to move to more efficiency. Are we serving people? The answer is yes. Are we serving people appropriately with the funds? The answer is yes. Though this is not a homeless program, remember where we are in the context that there are people with vouchers. They have the same voucher challenges that all persons with voucher challenges have, though theirs comes with HOPWA. And so they're working in a system that is not perfect.
That's really helpful. I guess the follow-up is, and maybe it's for us on the council, for management and you all and staff. So when these things happen, how in the future, how can we in a more timely way respond to this? Because I think what happens is people reach out, say we're concerned about underutilization, and then there's kind of silence, they don't know, and so they start losing confidence in government. Can we really deliver in a timely way for our residents? So I'm just kind of curious, again, this is for all of us, how do we in a more timely way receive these requests and respond to the community. So they know that, yeah, things happen, like agencies go into this stuff happens, but when it takes so long, I think there's, again, this growing concern about it's a mismanagement, what's going on. So we need to do better about that to find a way to respond. So in the future, how can we respond in a more timely way? These kind of concerns in the future.
Councilmember, that's a good point, and I concur with you that we need to respond more timely. And we should have and could have responded more timely. The challenge is that there are many issues where we need to respond more timely. And so that's how we just have to prioritize those such things such that we do. And that's probably the best answer that I can give you other than in agreeing with you.
And we need to find a way to work with management better to sort of, again, to address these in a more timely way so people know that we care and that things happen, but we also know that we can set priorities and make sure if things are a priority that we tackle them. Thank you.
Council members, you're going to get a proposal from me asking for us to consider a retreat outside of our budget retreats at some time coming up this year. And part of that retreat will be discussing more high-level values of how we want to, operate. This is in reference to the conversation we had during the hiring process of the manager. So that meeting will happen. You've heard me mention a lot about customer service today. Government is complex. It is a multi-level bureaucracy that is very, very, very complex to navigate. And I go back to my last conversation with Pete Buttigieg in DC. He said, Leo, one thing I regret most is not being able to fully make the department more efficient when it came to dispersing funds. And when I looked at it, I was like, well, dang, if he feels that way about transportation, I can only imagine what he feel like in HUD. HUD is like 10 times worse, but these systems are just really, really, really complex and dense. And, we're relying on our experts here to navigate with what's provided to them. So I know it's complex. I know it's difficult, but I also trust you and I trust your engagement. The fact that you've done a needs assessment, the fact that you've done community engagement, you're never going to please everybody. But I do appreciate the work you all do. And I think most importantly, I am saying as the mayor of the city, I trust you. And this council just wants the best outcome because we're that connection point to the broader community. So you're not going to hear us speak in the most technical terms of the work you do, but do take our commentary as appreciation to fulfilling an area that may not be being met. And I would say in this conversation with management, Councilmember Ritz, I think that there are some things that our manager can do with the staff that can get us to that point. Maybe if you all are running into complications, don't wait until the complication gets there before we find out. But maybe we can have an earlier notification system, and then we work on how we actually communicate to our constituency. I'm not going to ask you about communications because that's not your specialty, but we have communications department. We also have a manager that will be able to help us. We'll communicate to our constituency based on when we hear it. And I think that'll solve a lot. The fact that this is a bureaucracy is not an excuse for what is happening, but it's an acknowledgement of how these systems function, and it is up to us of how we communicate it. But we have to know, and I hope that everyone in the city feels empowered to be able to say, hey, I see the writing on the wall. We're running into an issue here. And I think that, knowing that and having an earlier arrival of that information can really solve a lot of the issue. You want to get into the characterizations of the issue. I don't think anybody in the city is mismanaging funds. You'll be in jail. So yeah. But it can feel that way if we're not properly communicating and things go awry. So
Received.
all right. Well, colleagues, are there any other questions? All right. I think those are all the items for today. Are you prepared to settle?
Yes, sir, we are. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, for settling the agenda, we have under consent, item 1, items 3 through 32. Under general GBA, item 2, under GBA public hearings, items 33 and 34.
I concur. Move to settle.
Second.
It's been moved and probably seconded to settle the agenda. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Williams,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem
I vote
Middleton,
aye.
Councilmember Baker, Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
Councilmember Rist.
Aye.
All right, thank you. The agenda has been settled. All right. Thank you all so much. It's at 3:56. Oh, I do have one other item that I'd like for us to consider. There is a resolution that I'm working on in conjunction with the mayors of Chapel Hill, Apex, Holly Springs, Cary, Raleigh. This resolution, which Madam Attorney, I'm going to send over to you all once we finish the draft, is in support or it's in reference to the freezing of funds and jobs for USAID. The Triangle is significantly impacted by this, more than most areas. I mean, we're talking 1,700 jobs. We're talking major organizations. The president of Duke University is in DC now, walking the halls of Congress, begging for them to come back to reality. RTI has taken a 30% cut. There are a lot of jobs that are getting hit, and that is going to impact our local economy in quite a significant way. I've been communicating with not only our fellow elected mayors and council members across the Triangle, but also many of our constituents who work in these spaces, who they're just in limbo. They don't know what's happening. I know a federal judge did delay the freezing of those jobs today. But right now we are talking about massive global shifting of funds on a day-to-day basis. This is out of control. But I'm working on this resolution, and I'd like to bring that before the council for us to consider. Everybody's okay with that? All right, thank you. All right, we're adjourned at 3:57. Thank you all.